Chapter 19 of The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Brontë. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
22nd. Night. What have I done? And what will be the end of it? I cannot calmly reflect upon it. I cannot sleep. I must have recourse to my diary again. I will commit it to paper to-night, and see what I shall think of it to-morrow. I went down to dinner, resolving to be cheerful and well conducted, and kept my resolution very creditably, considering how my head ached, and how internally wretched I felt. I don't know what has come over me of late. My very energies, both mental and physical, must be strangely impaired, or I should not have acted so weakly in many respects as I have done. But I have not been well this last day or two. I suppose it is with sleeping and eating so little, and thinking so much, and being so continually out of humour. But to return. I was exerting myself to sing and play for the amusement, and at the request of, my aunt and Millicent, before the gentlemen came into the drawing-room. Miss Wilmot never likes to waste her musical efforts on ladies' ears alone. Millicent had asked for a little Scotch song, and I was just in the middle of it when they entered. The first thing Mr. Huntingdon did was to walk up to Annabella.
"Now, Miss Wilmot, won't you give us some music tonight?"
said he.
"Do now. I know you will when I tell you that I've been hungering and thirsting all day for the sound of your voice. Come, the piano's vacant."
It was, for I had quitted it immediately upon hearing his petition. Had I been endowed with a proper degree of self-possession, I should have turned to the lady myself, and cheerfully joined my entreaties to his, whereby I should have disappointed his expectations, if the affront had been purposely given, or made him sensible of the wrong, if it had only arisen from thoughtlessness. But I felt it too deeply to do anything but rise from the music-stool, and throw myself back on the sofa, suppressing with difficulty the audible expression of the bitterness I felt within. I knew Annabella's musical talents were superior to mine, but that was no reason why I should be treated as a perfect nonentity. The time and the manner of his asking her appeared like a gratuitous insult to me, and I could have wept with pure vexation. Meantime, she exultingly seated herself at the piano, and favoured him with two of his favourite songs, in such superior style that even I soon lost my anger in admiration, and listened with a sort of gloomy pleasure to the skilful modulations of her full-toned and powerful voice, so judiciously aided by her rounded and spirited touch; and while my ears drank in the sound, my eyes rested on the face of her principal auditor, and derived an equal or superior delight from the contemplation of his speaking countenance, as he stood beside her. That eye and brow lighted up with keen enthusiasm, and that sweet smile passing and appearing like gleams of sunshine on an April day. No wonder he should hunger and thirst to hear her sing. I now forgave him from my heart his reckless slight of me, and I felt ashamed at my pettish resentment of such a trifle; ashamed, too, of those bitter, envious pangs that gnawed my inmost heart, in spite of all this admiration and delight.
"There now,"
said she, playfully running her fingers over the keys when she had concluded the second song.
"What shall I give you next?"
But in saying this, she looked back at Lord Loughborough, who was standing a little behind, leaning against the back of a chair, an attentive listener too, experiencing, to judge by his countenance, much the same feelings of mingled pleasure and sadness as I did. But the look she gave him plainly said,
"Do you choose for me now. I have done enough for him, and will gladly exert myself to gratify you."
And thus encouraged, his lordship came forward, and turning over the music, presently set before her a little song that I had noticed before, and read more than once, with an interest arising from the circumstance of my connecting it in my mind with the reigning tyrant of my thoughts. And now, with my nerves already excited, and half unstrung, I could not hear those words so sweetly warbled forth without some symptoms of emotion I was not able to suppress. Tears rose unbidden to my eyes, and I buried my face in the sofa pillow, that they might flow unseen while I listened. The air was simple, sweet, and sad. It is still running in my head, and so are the words.
"Farewell to thee, but not farewell to all my fondest thoughts of thee. Within my heart they still shall dwell, and they shall cheer and comfort me. O beautiful and full of grace, if thou hadst never met mine eye, I had not dreamed a living face could fancied charms so far outvie. If I may ne'er behold again that form and face so dear to me, nor hear thy voice, still would I fain preserve, for aye, their memory. That voice, the magic of whose tone can wake an echo in my breast, creating feelings that, alone, can make my tranced spirit blest. That laughing eye, whose sunny beam my memory would not cherish less, and oh, that smile, whose joyous gleam no mortal language can express. Adieu, but let me cherish still the hope with which I cannot part. Contempt may wound and coldness chill, but still it lingers in my heart. And who can tell but heaven at last may answer all my thousand prayers, and bid the future pay the past, with joy for anguish, smiles for tears.
When it ceased, I longed for nothing so much as to be out of the room. The sofa was not far from the door, but I did not dare to raise my head, for I knew Mr. Huntingdon was standing near me, and I knew by the sound of his voice, as he spoke in answer to some remark of Lord Loughborough's, that his face was turned towards me. Perhaps a half-suppressed sob had caught his ear, and caused him to look round. Heaven forbid! But with a violent effort I checked all further signs of weakness, dried my tears, and when I thought he had turned away again, rose, and instantly left the apartment, taking refuge in my favourite resort, the library. There was no light there but the faint red glow of the neglected fire, but I did not want a light. I only wanted to indulge my thoughts, unnoticed and undisturbed, and sitting down on a low stool before the easy-chair, I sunk my head upon its cushioned seat, and thought, until the tears gushed out again, and I wept like any child. Presently, however, the door was gently opened, and some one entered the room. I trusted it was only a servant, and did not stir. The door was closed again. But I was not alone. A hand gently touched my shoulder, and a voice said softly,
Helen, what is the matter?
I could not answer at the moment.
You must, and shall tell me,
was added, more vehemently, and the speaker threw himself on his knees beside me on the rug, and forcibly possessed himself of my hand. But I hastily caught it away, and replied, It is nothing to you, Mr. Huntingdon.
Are you sure it is nothing to me?
He returned.
Can you swear that you were not thinking of me while you wept?
This was unendurable. I made an effort to rise, but he was kneeling on my dress.
Tell me,
continued he.
I want to know. Because if you were, I have something to say to you, and if not, I'll go.
Go then, I cried. But fearing he would obey too well, and never come again, I hastily added, Or say what you have to say, and have done with it.
But which?
Said he.
For I shall only say it if you really were thinking of me. So tell me, Helen.
You're excessively impertinent, Mr. Huntingdon.
Not at all. Too pertinent, you mean. So you won't tell me. Well, I'll spare you the woman's pride, and construing your silence into yes. I'll take it for granted that I was the subject of your thoughts, and the cause of your affliction.
Indeed, sir.
If you deny it, I won't tell you my secret,
threatened he, and I did not interrupt him again, or even attempt to repulse him. Though he had taken my hand once more, and half embraced me with his other arm, I was scarcely conscious of it at the time.
It is this,
resumed he,
that Annabella Wilmot, in comparison with you, is like a flaunting peony, compared with a sweet, wild rosebud gemmed with dew, and I love you to distraction. Now tell me if that intelligence gives you any pleasure. Silence again? That means yes. Then let me add that I cannot live without you. And if you answer no to this last question, you will drive me mad. Will you bestow yourself upon me? You will!
He cried, nearly squeezing me to death in his arms. No, no! I exclaimed, struggling to free myself from him. You must ask my uncle and aunt.
They won't refuse me if you don't.
I'm not so sure of that. My aunt dislikes you.
But you don't, Helen. Say you love me, and I'll go.
I wish you would go, I replied.
I will, this instant, if you'll only say you love me.
You know I do, I answered, and again he caught me in his arms and smothered me with kisses. At that moment my aunt opened wide the door, and stood before us, candle in hand, in shocked and horrified amazement, gazing alternately at Mr. Huntingdon and me, for we had both started up, and now stood wide enough asunder. But his confusion was only for a moment. Rallying in an instant, with the most enviable assurance, he began.
I beg 10,000 pardons, Miss Maxwell. Don't be too severe upon me. I've been asking your sweet niece to take me for better, for worse, and she, like a good girl, informs me she cannot think of it without her uncle and aunt's consent. So let me implore you not to condemn me to eternal wretchedness. If you favour my cause, I am safe, for Mr. Maxwell, I am certain, can refuse you nothing.
We will talk of this tomorrow, sir,
said my aunt coldly.
It is a subject that demands mature and serious deliberation. At present, you had better return to the drawing-room.
But meantime,
pleaded he,
let me commend my cause to your most indulgent.
No indulgence for you, Mr. Huntingdon, must come between me and the consideration of my niece's happiness.
Ah, true. I know she is an angel, and I am a presumptuous dog to dream of possessing such a treasure. But nevertheless, I would sooner die than relinquish her in favour of the best man that ever went to heaven. And as for her happiness, I would sacrifice my body and soul.
Body and soul, Mr. Huntingdon? Sacrifice your soul?
Well, I would lay down life.
You would not be required to lay it down.
I would spend it then, devote my life and all its powers to the promotion and preservation.
Another time, sir, we will talk of this, and I should have felt disposed to judge more favourably of your pretensions if you too had chosen another time and place, and let me add, another manner for your declaration.
Why, you see, Mrs. Maxwell,
he began.
Pardon me, sir,
said she, with dignity.
The company are inquiring for you in the other room.
And she turned to me.
Then you must plead for me, Helen,
said he, and at length withdrew.
You had better retire to your room, Helen,
said my aunt gravely.
I will discuss this matter with you, too, tomorrow.
Don't be angry, aunt, said I.
My dear, I am not angry,
she replied.
I am surprised. If it is true that you told him you could not accept his offer without our consent.
It is true, interrupted I.
Then how could you permit—
I couldn't help it, aunt, I cried, bursting into tears. They were not altogether the tears of sorrow, or of fear for her displeasure, but rather the outbreak of the general tumultuous excitement of my feelings. But my good aunt was touched at my agitation. In a softer tone, she repeated her recommendation to retire, and gently kissing my forehead, bade me good night, and put her candle in my hand, and I went. But my brain worked so, I could not think of sleeping. I feel calmer now that I have written all this, and I will go to bed, and try to win tired nature's sweet restorer.
End of chapter 19. Chapter 20 of The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, by Anne Brontë. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
September 24th. In the morning I rose, light and cheerful, nay, intensely happy. The hovering cloud cast over me by my aunt's views, and by the fear of not obtaining her consent, was lost in the bright effulgence of my own hopes, and the too delightful consciousness of requited love. It was a splendid morning, and I went out to enjoy it, in a quiet ramble, in company with my own blissful thoughts. The dew was on the grass, and 10,000 gossamers were waving in the breeze. The happy redbreast was pouring out its little soul in song, and my heart overflowed with silent hymns of gratitude and praise to heaven. But I had not wandered far before my solitude was interrupted by the only person that could have disturbed my musings, at that moment, without being looked upon as an unwelcome intruder. Mr. Huntingdon came suddenly upon me. So unexpected was the apparition, that I might have thought it the creation of an over-excited imagination, had the sense of sight alone borne witness to his presence. But immediately I felt his strong arm round my waist, and his warm kiss on my cheek, while his keen and gleeful salutation,
my own Helen,
was ringing in my ear. Not yours yet, said I, hastily swerving aside from this too presumptuous greeting. Remember my guardians. You will not easily obtain my aunt's consent. Don't you see she is prejudiced against you?
I do, dearest, and you must tell me why, that I may best know how to combat her objections. I suppose she thinks I am a prodigal,
pursued he, observing that I was unwilling to reply,
and concludes that I shall have but little worldly goods wherewith to endow my better half. If so, you must tell her that my property is mostly entailed, and I cannot get rid of it. There may be a few mortgages on the rest, a few trifling debts and encumbrances here and there, but nothing to speak of, and though I acknowledge I am not so rich as I might be, or have been, still I think we could manage pretty comfortably on what's left. My father, you know, was something of a miser, and in his latter days especially saw no pleasure in life but to amass riches, and so it is no wonder that his son should make it his chief delight to spend them, which was accordingly the case until my acquaintance with you, dear Helen, taught me other views and noble aims, and the very idea of having you to care for under my roof would force me to moderate my expense and live like a Christian, not to speak of all the prudence and virtue you would instill in my mind by your wise counsel and sweet, attractive goodness.
But it is not that, said I. It is not money my aunt thinks about. She knows better than to value worldly wealth above its price.
What is it, then?
She wishes me to marry none but a really good man.
What, a man of decided piety? Well, come. I'll manage that too. It's Sunday today, isn't it? I'll go to church morning, afternoon, and evening, and comport myself in such a godly sort that she shall regard me with admiration and sisterly love, as a brand plucked from the burning. I'll come home sighing like a furnace, and full of the savory and unction of dear Mr. Blatton's discourse.
Mr. Leighton, said I dryly.
Is Mr. Leighton a sweet preacher, Helen? A dear, delightful, heavenly-minded man?
He is a good man, Mr. Huntingdon. I wish I could say half as much for you.
Oh, I forget you are a saint, too. I crave your pardon, dearest, but don't call me Mr. Huntingdon. My name is Arthur.
I'll call you nothing, for I'll have nothing at all to do with you if you talk in that way any more. If you really mean to deceive my aunt as you say, you are very wicked, and if not, you are very wrong to jest on such a subject.
I stand corrected,
said he, concluding his laugh with a sorrowful sigh.
Now,
resumed he, after a momentary pause,
let us talk about something else, and come near to me, Helen, and take my arm, and then I'll let you alone. I can't be quiet while I see you walking there.
I complied, but said we must soon return to the house.
No one will be down to breakfast yet for long enough,
he answered.
You spoke of your guardians just now, Helen, but is not your father still living?
Yes, but I always look upon my uncle and aunt as my guardians, for they are so indeed, though not in name. My father has entirely given me up to their care. I have never seen him since dear mamma died, when I was a very little girl, and my aunt, at her request, offered to take charge of me, and took me away to Stanningley, where I have remained ever since, and I don't think he would object to anything for me that she thought proper to sanction.
But would he sanction anything to which she thought proper to object?
No, I don't think he cares enough about me.
He's very much to blame, but he doesn't know what an angel he has for a daughter, which is all the better for me, as if he did he would not be willing to part with such a treasure.
And Mr. Huntingdon, said I suppose you know I'm not an heiress. He protested he had never given it a thought, and begged I would not disturb his present enjoyment by the mention of such uninteresting subjects. I was glad of this proof of disinterested affection, for Annabella Wilmot is the probable heiress to all her uncle's wealth, in addition to her late father's property, which she has already in possession. I now insisted upon retracing our steps to the house, but we walked slowly, and went on talking as we proceeded. I need not repeat all we said. Let me rather refer to what passed between my aunt and me, after breakfast, when Mr. Huntingdon called my uncle aside, no doubt to make his proposals, and she beckoned me into another room, where she once more commenced a solemn remonstrance, which, however, entirely failed to convince me that her view of the case was preferable to my own. You judge him uncharitably, aunt, I know, said I. His very friends are not half so bad as you represent them. There is Walter Hargrave, Millicent's brother, for one. He is but a little lower than the angels, if half she says of him is true. She is continually talking to me about him, and lauding his many virtues to the skies.
You will form a very inadequate estimate of a man's character,
replied she,
if you judge by what a fond sister says of him. The worst of them generally know how to hide their misdeeds from their sisters' eyes, and their mothers too.
And there is Lord Loughborough, continued I, quite a decent man.
Who told you so? Lord Loughborough is a desperate man. He has dissipated his fortune in gambling and other things, and is now seeking an heiress to retrieve it. I told Miss Wilmot so, but you're all alike. She haughtily answered she was very much obliged to me, but she believed she knew when a man was seeking her for her fortune, and when for herself. She flattered herself she had had experience enough in those matters to be justified in trusting to her own judgment, and as for his lordship's lack of fortune, she cared nothing about that, as she hoped her own would suffice for both, and as for his wildness, she supposed he was no worse than others. Besides, he was reformed now. Yes, they can all play the hypocrite when they want to take in a fond, misguided woman.
Well, I think he's about as good as she is, said I. But when Mr. Huntingdon is married, he won't have many opportunities of consorting with his bachelor friends, and the worse they are, the more I long to deliver him from them.
To be sure, my dear, and the worse he is, I suppose, the more you long to deliver him from himself.
Yes, provided he is not incorrigible. That is, the more I long to deliver him from his faults, to give him an opportunity of shaking off the adventitious evil got from contact with others worse than himself, and shining out in the unclouded light of his own genuine goodness, to do my utmost to help his better self against his worse, and make him what he would have been if he had not, from the beginning, had a bad, selfish, miserly father, who, to gratify his own sordid passions, restricted him in the most innocent enjoyments of childhood and youth, and so disgusted him with every kind of restraint, and a foolish mother, who indulged him to the top of his bent, deceiving her husband for him, and doing her utmost to encourage those germs of folly and vice it was her duty to suppress. And then such a set of companions as you represent his friends to be.
Poor man,
said she sarcastically.
His kind have greatly wronged him.
They have, cried I, and they shall wrong him no more. His wife shall undo what his mother did.
Well,
said she after a short pause,
I must say, Helen, I thought better of your judgment than this, and your taste too. How you can love such a man I cannot tell, or what pleasure you can find in his company, for what fellowship hath light with darkness, or he that believeth with an infidel?
He is not an infidel, and I am not light, and he is not darkness. His worst and only vice is thoughtlessness.
And thoughtlessness,
pursued my aunt,
may lead to every crime, and will but poorly excuse our errors in the sight of God. Mr. Huntingdon, I suppose, is not without the common faculties of man. He is not so light-headed as to be irresponsible. His Maker has endowed him with reason and conscience as well as the rest of us. The Scriptures are open to him as well as to others. And if he hear not them, neither will he hear through one rose from the dead. And remember, Helen,
continued she solemnly,
the wicked shall be turned into hell, and they that forget God. And suppose even that he should continue to love you, and you him, and that you should pass through life together with tolerable comfort, how will it be in the end when you see yourselves parted forever, you perhaps taken into eternal bliss, and he cast into the lake that burneth with unquenchable fire, there forever to—
Not forever, I exclaimed, only till he has paid the uttermost farthing. For if any man's work abide not the fire, he shall suffer loss, yet himself shall be saved, but so as by fire. And he that is able to subdue all things to himself will have all men to be saved, and will in the fullness of time gather together in one all things in Christ Jesus, who tasted death for every man, and in whom God will reconcile all things to himself, whether they be things in earth or things in heaven.
Oh, Helen, where did you learn all this?
In the Bible, aunt. I have searched it through, and found nearly 30 passages, all tending to support the same theory.
And is that the use you make of your Bible? And did you find no passages tending to prove the danger and the falsity of such a belief?
No. I found indeed some passages that, taken by themselves, might seem to contradict that opinion, but they will all bear a different construction to that which is commonly given, and in most the only difficulty is in the word which we translate everlasting or eternal. I don't know the Greek, but I believe it strictly means for ages, and might signify either endless or long enduring. And as for the danger of the belief, I would not publish it abroad if I thought any poor wretch would be likely to presume upon it to his own destruction. But it is a glorious thought to cherish in one's own heart, and I would not part with it for all the world can give." Here our conference ended, for it was now high time to prepare for church. Every one attended the morning service, except my uncle, who hardly ever goes, and Mr. Wilmot, who stayed at home with him to enjoy a quiet game of cribbage. In the afternoon Miss Wilmot and Lord Loughborough likewise excused themselves from attending, but Mr. Huntingdon vouchsafed to accompany us again. Whether it was to ingratiate himself with my aunt, I cannot tell, but if so, he certainly should have behaved better. I must confess I did not like his conduct during service at all. Holding his prayer book upside down, or open at any place but the right, he did nothing but stare about him, unless he happened to catch my aunt's eye, or mine, and then he would drop his own on his book, with a puritanical air of mock solemnity that would have been ludicrous if it had not been too provoking. Once, during the sermon, after attentively regarding Mr. Layton for a few minutes, he suddenly produced his gold pencil case and snatched up a Bible. Perceiving that I observed the movement, he whispered that he was going to make a note of the sermon, but instead of that, as I sat next to him, I could not help seeing that he was making a caricature of the preacher, giving to the respectable, pious, elderly gentleman the air and aspect of a most absurd old hypocrite. And yet, upon his return, he talked to my aunt about the sermon with a degree of modest, serious discrimination that tempted me to believe he had really attended to and profited by the discourse. Just before dinner my uncle called me into the library for the discussion of a very important matter, which was dismissed in few words.
"Now, Nell,"
said he,
"this young Huntington has been asking for you. What must I say about it? Your aunt would answer no, but what say you?"
"I say yes, uncle," replied I, without a moment's hesitation, for I had thoroughly made up my mind on the subject.
"Very good,"
cried he.
"Now that's a good, honest answer. Wonderful for a girl. Well, I'll write to your father tomorrow. He's sure to give his consent, so you may look on the matter as settled. You'd have done a deal better if you'd taken Wilmot, I can tell you, but that you won't believe. At your time of life, it's love that rules the roost. At mine, it's solid, serviceable gold. I suppose now you'd never dream of looking into the state of your husband's finances, or troubling your head about settlements, or anything of that sort?"
"I don't think I should."
"Well, be thankful then that you've wiser heads to think for you. I haven't had time yet to examine thoroughly into this young rascal's affairs, but I see that a great part of his father's fine property has been squandered away. But still I think there's a pretty fair share of it left, and a little careful nursing may make a handsome thing of it yet. And then we must persuade your father to give you a decent fortune, as he only has one besides yourself to care for. And if you behave well, who knows but what I might be induced to remember you in my will,"
continued he, putting his fingers to his nose with a knowing wink. "Thanks, uncle, for that and all your kindness," replied I.
"Well, and I questioned this young spark on the matter of settlements,"
continued he,
"and he seemed disposed to be generous enough on that point."
"I knew he would," said I, "but pray don't trouble your head, or his, or mine, about that. For all I have will be his, and all he has will be mine. And what more could either of us require?" And I was about to make my exit, but he called me back.
"Stop! Stop!"
cried he.
"We haven't mentioned the time yet. When must it be? Your aunt would put it off till Lord knows when, but he is anxious to be bound as soon as may be. He won't hear of waiting beyond next month, and you, I imagine, will be of the same mind, so—"
"Not at all, uncle. On the contrary, I should like to wait till after Christmas at least."
"Oh, pooh, pooh, never tell me that tale. I know better,"
cried he, and he persisted in his incredulity. "Nevertheless, it is quite true. I am in no hurry at all. How can I be, when I think of the momentous change that awaits me, and of all I have to leave? It is happiness enough to know that we are to be united, and that he really loves me, and I may love him as devotedly, and think of him as often as I please. However, I insisted upon consulting my aunt about the time of the wedding, for I determined her counsels should not be utterly disregarded, and no conclusions on that particular are come to yet.
End of chapter 20. Chapter 21 of The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, by Anne Brontë. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
October 1st. All is settled now. My father has given his consent, and the time is fixed for Christmas, by a sort of compromise between the respective advocates for hurry and delay. Millicent Hargrave is to be one bridesmaid, and Annabella Wilmot the other. Not that I am particularly fond of the latter, but she is an intimate of the family, and I have not another friend. When I told Millicent of my engagement, she rather provoked me by her manner of taking it. After staring a moment in mute surprise, she said,
"Well, Helen, I suppose I ought to congratulate you, and I am glad to see you so happy, but I did not think you would take him, and I can't help feeling surprised that you should like him so much."
"Why so?"
"Because you are so superior to him in every way, and there's something so bold and reckless about him. So I don't know how, but I always feel a wish to get out of his way when I see him approach."
"You are timid, Millicent, but that's no fault of his."
"And then his look,"
continued she.
"People say he's handsome, and of course he is, but I don't like that kind of beauty, and I wonder that you should."
"Why so, pray?"
"Well, you know, I think there's nothing noble or lofty in his appearance."
"In fact, you wonder that I can like anyone so unlike the stilted heroes of romance. Well, give me my flesh and blood lover, and I'll leave all the Sir Herberts and Valentines to you, if you can find them."
"I don't want them,"
said she.
"I'll be satisfied with flesh and blood too, only the spirit must shine through and predominate. But don't you think Mr. Huntingdon's face is too red?"
"No!" cried I indignantly. "It is not red at all. There is just a pleasant glow, a healthy freshness in his complexion. The warm pinky tint of the whole harmonizing with the deeper color of the cheeks, exactly as it ought to do. I hate a man to be red and white, like a painted doll, or all sickly white, or smoky black, or cadaverous yellow."
"Well, tastes differ, but I like pale or dark,"
replied she.
"But to tell you the truth, Helen, I had been deluding myself with the hope that you would one day be my sister. I expected Walter would be introduced to you next season, and I thought you would like him, and was certain he would like you, and I flattered myself I should thus have the felicity of seeing the two persons I like best in the world, except mamma, united in one. He mayn't be exactly what you would call handsome, but he's far more distinguished looking, and nicer and better than Mr. Huntingdon, and I'm sure you would say so if you knew him."
"Impossible, Millicent. You think so, because you are his sister, and on that account I'll forgive you, but nobody else should so disparage Arthur Huntingdon to me with impunity." Miss Wilmot expressed her feelings on the subject almost as openly.
"And so, Helen,"
said she, coming up to me with a smile of no amiable import,
"you are to be Mrs. Huntingdon, I suppose?"
"Yes," replied I. "Don't you envy me?"
"Oh dear, no,"
she exclaimed.
"I shall probably be Lady Loughborough some day, and then, you know, dear, I shall be in a capacity to inquire, 'Don't you envy me?'"
"Henceforth I shall envy no one," returned I.
"Indeed? Are you so happy, then?"
said she, thoughtfully, and something very like a cloud of disappointment shadowed her face.
"And does he love you? I mean, does he idolize you as much as you do him?"
she added, fixing her eyes upon me with ill-disguised anxiety for the reply. "I don't want to be idolized," I answered, "but I am well assured that he loves me more than anybody else in the world, as I do him."
"Exactly,"
said she with a nod.
"I wish—"
She paused. "What do you wish?" asked I, annoyed at the vindictive expression of her countenance.
"I wish,"
returned she, with a short laugh,
"that all the attractive points and desirable qualifications of the two gentlemen were united in one. That Lord Loughborough had Huntingdon's handsome face and good temper, and all his wit and mirth and charm, or else that Huntingdon had Loughborough's pedigree and title, and delightful old family seat, and I had him, and you might have the other and welcome.
Thank you, dear Annabella. I am better satisfied with things as they are, for my own part. And for you, I wish you were as well content with your intended as I am with mine, said I. And it was true enough. For, though vexed at first at her unamiable spirit, her frankness touched me, and the contrast between our situations was such that I could well afford to pity her and wish her well. Mr. Huntington's acquaintances appear to be no better pleased with our approaching union than mine. This morning's post brought him letters from several of his friends, during the perusal of which, at the breakfast table, he excited the attention of the company by the singular variety of his grimaces. But he crushed them all into his pocket, with a private laugh, and said nothing till the meal was concluded. Then, while the company were hanging over the fire or loitering through the room, previous to settling to their various morning avocations, he came and leant over the back of my chair, with his face in contact with my curls, and commencing with a quiet little kiss, poured forth the following complaints into my ear.
Helen, you witch, do you know that you've entailed upon me the curses of all my friends? I wrote to them the other day to tell them of my happy prospects, and now instead of a bundle of congratulations, I've got a pocket of bitter execrations and reproaches. There's not one kind wish for me, or one good word for you, among them all. They say there'll be no more fun now, no more merry days and glorious nights, and all my fault. I am the first to break up the jovial band, and others, in pure despair, will follow my example. I was the very life and prop of the community, they do me the honour to say, and I have shamefully betrayed my trust.
You may join them again, if you like, said I, somewhat piqued at the sorrowful tone of his discourse. I should be sorry to stand between any man, or body of men, and so much happiness, and perhaps I can manage to do without you, as well as your poor deserted friends.
Bless you, no,
murmured he.
It's all for love or the world well lost with me. Let them go to where they belong, to speak politely. But if you saw how they abuse me, Helen, you would love me all the more for having ventured so much for your sake.
He pulled out his crumpled letters. I thought he was going to show them to me, and told him I did not wish to see them.
I'm not going to show them to you, love,
said he.
They're hardly fit for a lady's eyes, the most part of them. But look here. This is Grimsby's scrawl. Only 3 lines, the sulky dog. He doesn't say much, to be sure, but his very silence implies more than all the others' words. And the less he says, the more he thinks. And this is Hargrave's missive. He is particularly grieved at me, because forsooth he had fallen in love with you from his sister's reports, and meant to have married you himself, as soon as he had sown his wild oats.
I'm vastly obliged to him, observed I.
And so am I,
said he.
And look at this. This is Hattersley's. Every page stuffed full of railing accusations, bitter curses, and lamentable complaints, ending up with swearing that he'll get married himself in revenge. He'll throw himself away on the first old maid that chooses to set her cap at him, as if I cared what he did with himself.
Well, said I, if you do give up your intimacy with these men, I don't think you will have much cause to regret the loss of their society, for it's my belief they never did you much good.
Maybe not, but we'd a merry time of it too, though mingled with sorrow and pain, as Loughborough knows to his cost.
And while he was laughing at the recollection of Loughborough's troubles, my uncle came and slapped him on the shoulder.
"Come, my lad,"
said he.
"are you too busy making love to my niece to make war with the pheasants? 1st of October, remember. Sun shines out, rain ceased. Even Mr. Boreham's not afraid to venture in his waterproof boots, and Wilmot and I are going to beat you all. I declare, we old uns are the keenest sportsmen of the lot."
I'll show you what I can do today, however,
said my companion.
I'll murder your birds by wholesale, just for keeping me away from better company than either you or them.
And so saying he departed, and I saw no more of him till dinner. It seemed a weary time. I wonder what I shall do without him. It is very true that the 3 elder gentlemen have proved themselves much keener sportsmen than the 2 younger ones, for both Lord Loughborough and Arthur Huntingdon have of late, almost daily, neglected the shooting excursions, to accompany us in our various rides and rambles. But these merry times are fast drawing to a close. In less than a fortnight the party break up, much to my sorrow, for every day I enjoy it more and more. Now that Messrs. Boreham and Wilmot have ceased to tease me, and my aunt has ceased to lecture me, and I have ceased to be jealous of Annabella, and even to dislike her, and now that Mr. Huntingdon is become my Arthur, and I may enjoy his society without restraint. What shall I do without him, I repeat?
End of chapter 21. Chapter 22 of The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Brontë. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
October 5th. My cup of sweets is not unmingled. It is dashed with a bitterness that I cannot hide from myself, disguise it as I will. I may try to persuade myself that the sweetness overpowers it. I may call it a pleasant aromatic flavour. But say what I will, it is still there, and I cannot but taste it. I cannot shut my eyes to Arthur's faults, and the more I love him, the more they trouble me. His very heart, that I trusted so, is, I fear, less warm and generous than I thought it. At least he gave me a specimen of his character to-day that seemed to merit a harder name than thoughtlessness. He and Lord Loughborough were accompanying Annabella and me in a long delightful ride. He was riding by my side, as usual, and Annabella and Lord Loughborough were a little before us, the latter bending towards his companion, as if in tender and confidential discourse.
"Those two will get the start of us, Helen, if we don't look sharp,"
observed Huntingdon.
"They'll make a match of it, as sure as can be. That Loughborough's fairly besot, but he'll find himself in a fix when he's got her, I doubt."
"And she'll find herself in a fix when she's got him," said I, "if what I've heard of him is true."
"Not a bit of it. She knows what she's about, but he, poor fool, deludes himself with the notion that she will make him a good wife, and because she has amused him with some rhodomontade about despising rank and wealth in matter of love and marriage, he flatters himself that she's devotedly attached to him, that she will not refuse him for his poverty, and does not court him for his rank, but loves him for himself alone."
"But is not he courting her for her fortune?"
"No, not he. That was the first attraction, certainly, but now he's quite lost sight of it. It never enters his calculations, except merely as an essential with which, for the lady's own sake, he could not think of marrying her. No, he's fairly in love. He thought he never could be again, but he's in for it once more. He was to have been married before, some 2 or 3 years ago, but he lost his bride by losing his fortune. He got into a bad way among us in London. He had an unfortunate taste for gambling, and surely the fellow was born under an unlucky star, for he always lost thrice when he gained once. That's a mode of self-torment I was never much addicted to. When I spend my money, I like to enjoy the full value of it. I see no fun in wasting it on thieves and blacklegs, and as for gaining money, hitherto I have always had sufficient. It's time enough to be clutching for more, I think, when you begin to see the end of what you have. But I have sometimes frequented the gaming-house, just to watch the ongoings of those mad voitureurs of chance. A very interesting study, I assure you, Helen, and sometimes very diverting. I've had many a laugh at the boobies and bedlamontees. Loughborough was quite infatuated, not willingly, but of necessity. He was never resolved to give it up, and always breaking his resolutions. Every venture was the just once more. If he gained a little, he hoped to gain a little more next time, and if he lost, it would not do to leave off at that juncture. He must go on till he had retrieved that last misfortune. At least bad luck could not last forever, and every lucky hit was looked upon as the dawn of better times, till experience proved the contrary. At length he grew desperate, and we were on the daily lookout for the case of Felo de C. No great matter, some of us whispered, as his existence had ceased to be an acquisition to our club. At last, however, he came to a check. He made a large stake, which he determined should be the last, whether he lost or won. He had often so determined before, to be sure, and has often broken his determination, and so it was this time. He lost, and while his antagonist smilingly swept away the stakes, he turned chalky white, drew back in silence, and wiped his forehead. I was present at the time, and while he stood with folded arms and eyes fixed on the ground, I knew well enough what was passing in his mind. "Is it to be the last, Loughborough?" said I, stepping up to him.
"The last but one,"
he answered with a grim smile, and then rushing back to the table, he struck his hand upon it, and raising his voice high above all the confusion of jingling coins and muttered oaths and curses in the room, he swore a deep and solemn oath that come what would, this trial should be the last, and imprecated unspeakable curses on his head if ever he should shuffle a card or rattle a dice-box again. He then doubled his former stake, and challenged anyone present to play against him. Grimsby instantly presented himself. Loughborough glared fiercely at him, for Grimsby was almost as celebrated for his luck as he was for his ill fortune. However, they fell to work, but Grimsby had much skill and little scruple, and whether he took advantage of the other's trembling, blinded eagerness to deal unfairly by him, I cannot undertake to say. But Lowborough lost again, and fell dead sick.
"You'd better try once more,"
said Grimsby, leaning across the table, and then he winked at me.
I've nothing to try with,
said the poor devil with a ghastly smile.
"Oh, Huntingdon will lend you what you want,"
said the other.
No, you heard my oath,
answered Lowborough, turning away in quiet despair, and I took him by the arm and led him out. Is it to be the last, Lowborough? I asked when I got him into the street.
The last,
he answered, somewhat against my expectation, and I took him home, that is, to our club, for he was as submissive as a child, and plied him with brandy and water till he began to look rather brighter, rather more alive, at least.
Huntingdon, I'm ruined,
said he, taking the third glass from my hand. He had drunk the others in dead silence. Not you, said I. You'll find a man can live without his money as merrily as a tortoise without its head, or a wasp without its body.
But I'm in debt,
said he.
Deep in debt, and I can never, never get out of it.
Well, what of that? Many a better man than you have lived and died in debt, and they can't put you in prison, you know, because you're a peer. And I handed him his fourth tumbler.
But I hate to be in debt,
he shouted.
I wasn't born for it, and I cannot bear it.
What can't be cured must be endured, said I, beginning to mix the fifth.
Then I've lost my Caroline.
And he began to snivel then, for the brandy had softened his heart. No matter, I answered. There are more Carolines in the world than one.
There's only one for me,
he replied with a dolorous sigh.
And if there were 50 more, who's to get them, I wonder, without money?
Oh, somebody will take you for your title. And then you've your family estate yet. That's entailed, you know.
I wish to God I could sell it to pay my debts,
he muttered.
"And then,"
said Grimsby, who had just come in,
"you can try again, you know. I would have more than one chance if I were you. I'd never stop here."
I won't, I tell you,
shouted he, and he started up and left the room, walking rather unsteadily, for the liquor had gotten into his head. He was not so much used to it then, but after that he took to it kindly to solace his cares. He kept his oath about gambling, not a little to the surprise of us all, though Grimsby did his utmost to tempt him to break it. But now he had got hold of another habit that bothered him nearly as much, for he soon discovered that the demon of drink was as black as the demon of play, and nearly as hard to get rid of, especially as his kind friends did all they could to second the promptings of his own insatiable cravings.
"Then they were demons themselves," cried I, unable to contain my indignation. "And you, Mr. Huntingdon, it seems, were the first to tempt him."
Well, what could we do?
replied he, deprecatingly.
We meant it in kindness. We couldn't bear to see the poor fellow so miserable, and besides he was such a damper upon us, sitting there silent and glum, when he was under the threefold influence of the loss of his sweetheart, the loss of his fortune, and the reaction of the lost night's debauch, whereas when he had something in him, if he was not merry himself, he was an unfailing source of merriment to us. Even Grimsby could chuckle over his odd sayings. They delighted him far more than my merry jests, or Hattersley's riotous mirth. But one evening, when we were sitting over our wine after one of our club dinners, and all had been hearty together, Lowborough giving us mad toasts and hearing to our wild songs and bearing a hand in the applause, if he did not help to sing them himself, he suddenly relapsed into silence, sinking his head on his hand, and never lifting his glass to his lips. But this was nothing new, so we let him alone and went on with our jollification, till suddenly, raising his head, he interrupted us in the middle of a roar of laughter by exclaiming,
Gentlemen, where is all this to end? Will you just tell me that now? Where is it all to end?
He rose. A speech! Shouted we. Hear, hear! Lowborough's going to give us a speech. He waited calmly till the thunders of applause and jingling of glasses had ceased, and then proceeded.
It's only this, gentlemen, that I think we'd better go no further. We'd better stop while we can.
Just so,
cried Hattersley.
Stop, poor sinner, stop and think before you further go. No longer sport upon the brink of everlasting woe.
Exactly,
replied his lordship with the utmost gravity.
And if you choose to visit the bottomless pit, I won't go with you. We must part company, for I'll swear I'll not move another step towards it. What's this?
he said, taking up his glass of wine. Taste it, suggested I.
This is hell broth,
he exclaimed.
I renounce it for ever."
And he threw it out into the middle of the table. "Fill again," said I, handing him the bottle, "and let us drink to your renunciation."
"It's rank poison,"
said he, grasping the bottle by the neck.
"and I forswear it. I've given up gambling, and I'll give up this too."
He was on the point of deliberately pouring the whole content of the bottle onto the table, but Hargrave wrestled it from him.
"On you be the curse, then,"
said he, and backing from the room, he shouted,
"Farewell, ye tempters,"
and vanished amid the shouts of laughter and applause. We expected him back among us the next day, but to our surprise the place remained vacant. We saw nothing of him for a whole week, and we really began to think he was going to keep his word. At last one evening, when we were most of us assembled together again, he entered, silent and grim as a ghost, and would have quietly slipped into his usual seat at my elbow. But we all rose to welcome him, and several voices were raised to ask what he would have, and several hands were busy with bottle and glass to serve him. But I knew a smoking tumbler of brandy and water would comfort him best, and had nearly prepared it, when he peevishly pushed it away, saying,
"Do let me alone, Huntingdon. Do be quiet, all of you. I've not come to join you. I've only come to be with you a while, 'cause I can't bear my own thoughts."
And he folded his arms and leant back in his chair. So we let him be. But I left the glass by him, and after a while Grimsby directed my attention towards it, by a significant wink, and, on turning my head, I saw it was drained to the bottom. He made me a sign to replenish, and quietly pushed up the bottle. I willingly complied, but Lowborough detected the pantomime, and, nettled at the intelligent grins that were passing between us, snatched the glass from my hand, dashed the contents of it in Grimsby's face, threw the empty tumbler at me, and then bolted from the room.
"I hope he broke your head," said I.
"No, love,"
replied he, laughing immoderately at the recollection of the whole affair.
"He would have done so, and perhaps spoiled my face too, but providentially this forest of curls,"
taking off his hat and showing his luxuriant chestnut locks,
"saved my skull and prevented the glass from breaking till it reached the table. After that,"
he continued,
"Lowborough kept aloof from us a week or two longer. I used to meet him occasionally in the town, and then, as I was too good-natured to resent his unmannerly conduct, and he bore no malice against me, he was never unwilling to talk to me. On the contrary, he would cling to me, and follow me anywhere but to the club and the gaming-houses and such like dangerous places of resort. He was so weary of his own moping, melancholy mind. At last I got him to come in with me to the club, on condition that I would not tempt him to drink, and for some time he continued to look in upon us pretty regular of an evening, still abstaining with wonderful perseverance from the rank poison he had so bravely forsworn. But some of our members protested against this conduct. They did not like to have him sitting there like a skeleton at a feast instead of contributing his quota to the general amusement, casting a cloud over all, and watching with greedy eyes every drop they carried to their lips. They vowed it was not fair, and some of them maintained that he should either be compelled to do as others did, or expelled from the society, and swore that next time he showed himself they would tell him as much, and if he did not take the warning, proceed to active measures. However, I befriended him on this occasion, and recommended them to let him be for a while, intimating that, with a little patience on our part, he would soon come round again. But to be sure it was rather provoking, for though he refused to drink like an honest Christian, it was well known to me that he kept a private bottle of laudanum about him, which was continually soaking at, or rather holding off and on with abstaining one day and exceeding the next, just like the spirits. One night, however, during one of our orgies, one of our high festivals, I mean, he glided in like the ghost in Macbeth, and seated himself, as usual, a little back from the table, in the chair we always placed for the spectre, whether it chose to fill it or not. I saw by his face that he was suffering from the effects of an overdose of the insidious comforter, but nobody spoke to him, and he spoke to nobody. A few sidelong glances and a whispered observation that the ghost was come was all the notice he drew by his appearance, and we went on with our merry carousals as before, till he startled us all by suddenly drawing in his chair and leaning forward with his elbows on the table, and exclaiming with portentous solemnity,
"Well, it puzzles me what you can find to be so merry about. What you see in life I don't know. I see only the blackness of darkness, and a fearful looking for of judgment and fiery indignation."
All the company simultaneously pushed up their glasses to him, and I set them before him in a semicircle, and tenderly patting him on the back, bid him drink, and he would soon see as bright a prospect as any of us. But he pushed them back, muttering,
"Take them away. I won't taste it. I tell you I won't. I won't."
so I handed them down again to the owners, but I saw that he followed them with a glare of hungry regret as they departed. Then he clasped his hands before his eyes to shut out the sight, and 2 minutes after lifted his head again, and said in a hoarse but vehement whisper,
"Yet I must. Huntingdon, get me a glass."
"Take the bottle, man," I said, thrusting the brandy bottle into his hand. "But stop. I'm telling too much,"
muttered the narrator, startled at the look I turned upon him.
"But no matter,"
he recklessly added, and thus continued his relation.
In his desperate eagerness, he seized the bottle and sucked away till he suddenly dropped from behind his chair, disappearing under the table amid a tempest of applause. The consequence of this imprudence was something like an apoplectic fit, followed by a rather severe brain fever.
"And what did you think of yourself, sir?" said I quickly.
"Of course I was very penitent,"
he replied.
"I went to see him once or twice, nay, twice or thrice, or by our lady, some 4 times, and when he got better, I tenderly brought him back to the fold."
"What do you mean?"
"I mean I restored him to the bosom of the club, and compassionating the feebleness of his health and extreme lowness of his spirits, I recommended him to take a little wine for his stomach's sake, and when he was sufficiently re-established, to embrace the médiévia ni jamais ni toujours plan, not to kill himself like a fool, and not to abstain like a ninny. In a word, to enjoy himself like a rational creature, and do as I did, for don't think, Helen, that I am a tippler. I am nothing at all of the kind, and never was, and never shall be. I value my comfort far too much. I see that a man cannot give himself up to drinking without being miserable 1/2 his days, and mad the other. Besides, I like to enjoy my life at all sides and ends, which cannot be done by one that suffers himself to be the slave of a single propensity. And moreover, drinking spoils one's good looks,"
he concluded, with a most conceited smile that ought to have provoked me more than it did. "And did Lord Loughborough profit by your advice?" I asked.
"Why, yes, in a manner. For a while he managed very well. Indeed, he was a model of moderation and prudence, something too much so for the tastes of our wild community. But somehow Loughborough had not the gift of moderation. If he stumbled a little to one side, he must go down before he could right himself. If he overshot the mark one night, the effects of it rendered him so miserable the next day that he must repeat the offence to mend it, and so on from day to day till his clamorous conscience brought him to a stand. And then, in his sober moments, he so bothered his friends with his remorse, and his terrors and woes, that they were obliged, in self-defence, to get him to drown his sorrows in wine, or any more potent beverage that came to hand. And when his friends' scruples of conscience were overcome, he would need no more persuading. He would often grow desperate, and be as great a blackguard as any of them could desire, but only to lament his own unutterable wickedness and degradation the more when the fit was over. At last, one day, when he and I were alone together, after pondering a while in one of his gloomy, abstracted moods, with his arms folded and his head sunk on his breast, he suddenly woke up, and vehemently grasping my arm, said,
"Huntingdon, this won't do. I'm resolved to have done with it."
"What, are you going to shoot yourself?" said I.
"No, I'm going to reform."
"Oh, that's nothing new. You've been going to reform these 12 months and more."
"Yes, but you wouldn't let me, and I was such a fool I couldn't live without you. But now I see what it is that keeps me back, and what's wanted to save me, and I'd compass sea and land to get it. Only I'm afraid there's no chance."
And he sighed as if his heart would break. "What is it, Loughborough?" said I, thinking he was fairly cracked at last.
"A wife,"
he answered.
"For I can't live alone, for my own mind distracts me, and I can't live with you, because you take the devil's part against me."
"Who, I?"
"Yes, all of you do, and you more than any of them, you know. But if I could get a wife, with fortune enough to pay off my debts and set me straight in the world—"
"To be sure," said I.
"And sweetness and goodness enough,"
he continued,
"to make home tolerable and to reconcile me to myself, I think I should do yet. I shall never be in love again, that's certain. But perhaps that would be no great matter. It would enable me to choose with my eyes open, and I should make a good husband in spite of it. But could any one be in love with me? That's the question. With your good looks and powers of fascination,"
he was pleased to say,
"I might hope, but as it is, Huntingdon, do you think anybody would take me, ruined and wretched as I am?"
"Yes, certainly."
"Who?"
Why, any neglected old maid fast sinking in despair would be delighted to—"
No, no,
said he.
it must be somebody that I can love.
Why, you just said you never could be in love again.
Well, love is not the word, but somebody that I can like. I'll search all England through, at all events.
He cried with a sudden burst of hope or desperation.
Succeed or fail, it will be better than rushing headlong to destruction at that damned club. So farewell to it, and you. Whenever I meet you on honest ground or under a Christian roof, I shall be glad to see you. But never more shall you entice me to that devil's den.
This was shameful language, but I shook hands with him, and we parted. He kept his word, and from that time forward he has been a pattern of propriety, as far as I can tell. But till lately I have not had very much to do with him. He occasionally sought my company, but as frequently shrunk from it, fearing lest I should wile him back to destruction, and I found his not very entertaining, especially as he sometimes attempted to awaken my conscience and draw me from the perdition he considered himself to have escaped. But when I did happen to meet him, I seldom failed to ask after the progress of his matrimonial efforts and researches, and, in general, he could give me but a poor account. The mothers were repelled by his empty coffers and his reputation for gambling, and the daughters by his cloudy brow and melancholy temper. Besides, he didn't understand them. He wanted the spirit and assurance to carry his point. I left him at it when I went to the Continent, and on my return at the year's end I found him still a disconsolate bachelor, though certainly looking somewhat less like an unblessed exile from the tomb than before. The young ladies had ceased to be afraid of him, and were beginning to think him quite interesting, but the mammas were still unrelenting. It was about this time, Helen, that my good angel brought me into conjunction with you, and then I had eyes and ears for nobody else. But meantime Lowborough became acquainted with our charming friend Miss Wilmot, through the intervention of his good angel, no doubt he will tell you, though he did not dare to fix his hopes on one so courted and admired till after they were brought into closer contact here at Stanningley, and she, in the absence of her other admirers, indubitably courting his notice, and held out every encouragement to his timid advances. Then indeed he began to hope for a dawn of brighter days, and if, for a while, I darkened his prospects by standing between him and his son, and so nearly plunging him again into the abyss of despair, it only intensified his ardour, and strengthened his hopes when I chose to abandon the field in the pursuit of a brighter treasure. In a word, as I told you, he is fairly besought. At first he could dimly perceive her faults, and they gave him considerable uneasiness, but now his passion and her art together have blinded him to everything but her perfection and his amazing good fortune. Last night he came to me, brimful of his new-found felicity.
Huntingdon, I am not a castaway,
said he, seizing my hand and squeezing it like a vice.
There is happiness in store for me yet, even in this life. She loves me.
Indeed, said I. Has she told you so?
No, but I can no longer doubt it. Do you not see how pointedly kind and affectionate she is? And she knows the utmost extent of my poverty, and cares nothing about it. She knows all the folly and all the wickedness of my former life, and is not afraid to trust me. And my rank and title are no allurements to her, for them she utterly disregards. She is the most generous, high-minded being that can be conceived of. She will save me, body and soul, from destruction. Already she has ennobled me in my own estimation, and made me 3 times better, wiser, greater than I was. Oh, if I had but known her before, how much degradation and misery I should have been spared! But what have I done to deserve so magnificent a creature?
And the cream of the jest,
continued Mr. Huntingdon, laughing,
is that the artful minx loves nothing about him but his title and pedigree, and that delightful old family seat.
How do you know? Said I.
She told me so herself. She said,
As for the man himself, I thoroughly despise him. But then, I suppose, it is time to be making my choice, and if I waited for someone capable of eliciting my esteem and affection, I should have to pass my life in single blessedness, for I detest you all.
I suspect she was wrong there, but however, it is evident she has no love for him, poor fellow.
Then you ought to tell him so.
What? And spoil all her plans and prospects, poor girl? No, that would be a breach of confidence, wouldn't it, Helen? Besides, it would break his heart.
And he laughed again. Well, Mr. Huntingdon, I don't know what you see so amazingly diverting in the matter. I see nothing to laugh at.
I'm laughing at you just now, love,
said he, redoubling his machinations. And leaving him to enjoy his merriment alone, I touched Ruby with the whip, and cantered on to rejoin our companions, for we had been walking our horses all this time, and were consequently a long way behind. Arthur was soon at my side again, but not disposed to talk to him, I broke into a gallop. He did the same, and we did not slacken our pace till we came up with Miss Wilmot and Lord Loughborough, which was within half a mile of the park gates. I avoided all further conversation with him till we came to the end of our ride, when I meant to jump off my horse and vanish into the house before he could offer his assistance. But while I was disengaging my habit from the crutch, he lifted me off, and held me by both hands, asserting that he would not let me go till I had forgiven him. "I have nothing to forgive," said I. "You have not injured me."
No, darling, God forbid that I should. But you were angry because it was to me that Annabella confessed her lack of esteem for her lover.
No, Arthur, it is not that displeases me. It is the whole system of your conduct towards your friend, and if you wish me to forget it, go now and tell him what sort of a woman it is that he adores so madly, and on whom he has hung his hopes of future happiness.
I tell you, Helen, it would break his heart. It would be the death of him, besides being a scandalous trick to poor Annabella. There is no help for him now. He is past praying for. Besides, she may keep up the deception to the end of the chapter, and then he will be just as happy in the illusion as if it were reality. Or perhaps he will only discover his mistake when he has ceased to love her. And if not, it is much better that the truth should dawn gradually upon him. So now, my angel, I hope I have made out a clear case, and fully convinced you that I cannot make the atonement you require. What other requisition have you to make? Speak, and I will gladly obey.
I have none but this, said I, as gravely as before, that in future you will never make a jest of the sufferings of others, and always use your influence with your friends for their own advantage against their evil propensities, instead of seconding their evil propensities against themselves.
I will do my utmost,
said he,
to remember and perform the interjunctions of my angel monitress.
And after kissing both my gloved hands, he let me go. When I entered my room, I was surprised to see Annabella Wilmot standing before my toilet table, composedly surveying her features in the glass, with one hand flirting her gold-mounted whip, and the other holding up her long habit. She certainly is a magnificent creature, thought I, as I beheld that tall, finely developed figure, and the reflection of the handsome face in the mirror before me, with the glossy dark hair, slightly and not ungracefully disordered by the breezy ride, the rich brown complexion glowing with exercise, and the black eyes sparkling with unwonted brilliance. On perceiving me, she turned round, exclaiming, with a laugh that savoured more of malice than of mirth,
"Why, Helen, what have you been doing so long? I came to tell you my good fortune,"
she continued, regardless of Rachel's presence.
"Lord Loughborough has proposed, and I have been graciously pleased to accept him. Don't you envy me, dear?"
"No, love," said I. "Or him either," I mentally added. "And do you like him, Annabella?"
"Like him? Yes, to be sure. Over head and ears in love."
"Well, I hope you make him a good wife."
"Thank you, my dear. And what besides do you hope?"
"I hope you will both love each other, and both be happy."
"Thanks. And I hope you will make a very good wife to Mr. Huntingdon,"
said she, with a queenly bow, and retired.
"Oh, miss, how could you say so to her?"
cried Rachel. "Say what?" replied I.
"Why, that you hoped she would make him a good wife. I never heard such a thing."
"Because I do hope it. Or rather, I wish it. She's almost past hope."
"Well,"
said she,
"I'm sure I hope he'll make her a good husband. They tell queer things about him downstairs. They were saying—"
"I know, Rachel. I've heard all about him. But he's reformed now, and they have no business to tell tales about their masters."
"No, mum. Or else they have said some things about Mr. Huntingdon, too."
"I won't hear them, Rachel. They tell lies."
"Yes, mum,"
said she quietly, as she went on arranging my hair. "Do you believe them, Rachel?" I asked, after a short pause.
"No, miss, not all. You know when a lot of servants gets together, they like to talk about their betters, and some, for a bit of swagger, likes to make it appear as though they knew more than they do, and to throw out hints and things just to astonish the others. But I think, if I was you, Miss Helen, I'd look very well before I leaped. I do believe a young lady can't be too careful who she marries."
"Of course not," said I. "But be quick, will you, Rachel? I want to be dressed." And indeed I was anxious to be rid of the good woman, for I was in such a melancholy frame I could hardly keep the tears out of my eyes while she dressed me. It was not for Lord Loughborough, it was not for Annabella, it was not for myself. It was for Arthur Huntingdon that they rose. 13th. They are gone, and he is gone. We are to be parted for more than 2 months, above 10 weeks. A long, long time to live and not to see him. But he has promised to write often, and made me promise to write still oftener, because he will be busy settling his affairs, and I shall have nothing better to do. Well, I think I shall always have plenty to say. But oh, for the time when we shall be always together, and can exchange our thoughts without the intervention of these cold go-betweens, pen, ink, and paper. 22nd. I have had several letters from Arthur already. They are not long, but passing sweet, and just like himself, full of ardent affection, and playful lively humour. But there is always a but in this imperfect world, and I do wish he would sometimes be serious. I cannot get him to write or speak in real solid earnest. I don't much mind it now, but if it be always so, what shall I do with the serious part of myself?
End of chapter 22. Chapter 23 of The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Brontë. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
February 18, 1822. Early this morning Arthur mounted his hunter and set off in high glee to meet the hounds. He will be away all day, and so I will amuse myself with my neglected diary, if I can give that name to such an irregular composition. It is exactly 4 months since I opened it last. I am married now, and settled down as Mrs. Huntingdon of Grassdale Manor. I have had 8 weeks' experience of matrimony. And do I regret the step I have taken? No, though I must confess, in my secret heart, that Arthur is not what I thought him at first, and if I had known him in the beginning as thoroughly as I do now, I probably never should have loved him, and if I loved him first, and then made the discovery, I fear I should have thought it my duty not to have married him. To be sure, I might have known him, for everyone was willing enough to tell me about him, and he himself was no accomplished hypocrite. But I was wilfully blind, and now, instead of regretting that I did not discern his full character before I was dissolubly bound to him, I am glad, for it has saved me a great deal of battling with my conscience, and a great deal of consequent trouble and pain, and whatever I ought to have done, my duty now is plainly to love him, and to cleave to him, and this just tallies with my inclination. He is very fond of me, almost too fond. I could do with less caressing and more rationality. I should like to be less of a pet, and more of a friend, if I might choose. But I won't complain of that. I am only afraid his affection loses in depth where it gains in ardour. I sometimes liken it to a fire of dry twigs and branches, compared with one of solid coal, very bright and hot, but if it should burn itself out, and leave nothing but ashes behind, what shall I do? But it won't. It shan't, I am determined. And surely I have power to keep it alive, so let me dismiss that thought at once. But Arthur is selfish. I am constrained to acknowledge that, and indeed the admission gives me less pain than might be expected, for since I love him so much, I can easily forgive him for loving himself. He likes to be pleased, and it is my delight to please him, and when I regret this tendency of his, it is for his own sake, not for mine. The first instance he gave was on the occasion of our bridal tour. He wanted to hurry it over, for all the continental scenes were already familiar to him. Many had lost their interest in his eyes, and others had never had anything to lose. The consequence was, that after a flying transit through part of France and part of Italy, I came back nearly as ignorant as I went, having made no acquaintance with persons and manners, and very little with things, my head swarming with a motley confusion of objects and scenes. Some, it is true, leaving a deeper and more pleasing impression than others, but these embittered by the recollection that my emotions had not been shared by my companion, but that, on the contrary, when I had expressed a particular interest in anything that I saw, or desired to see, it had been displeasing to him, inasmuch as it proved that I could take delight in anything disconnected with himself. As for Paris, we only just touched at that, and he would not give me time to see 1/10 of the beauties and interesting objects of Rome. He wanted to get me home, he said, to have me all to himself, and to see me safely installed as the mistress of Grassdale Manor, just as single-minded, as naive and piquant as I was, and as if I had been some frail butterfly. He expressed himself fearful of rubbing the silver off my wings, by bringing me into contact with society, especially that of Paris and Rome, And moreover, he did not scruple to tell me that there were ladies in both places that would tear his eyes out if they happened to meet him with me. Of course I was vexed at all this, but still it was less the disappointment to myself that annoyed me than the disappointment in him, and the trouble I was at to frame excuses to my friends for having seen and observed so little without inputting one particle of blame to my companion. But when we got home, to my new delightful home, I was so happy, and he was so kind that I freely forgave him all, and I was beginning to think my lot too happy, and my husband actually too good for me, if not too good for this world, when, on the second Sunday after our arrival, he shocked and horrified me by another instance of his unreasonable exaction. We were walking home from the morning service, for it was a fine frosty day, and as we are so near the church, I had requested the carriage should not be used.
Helen,
said he, with unusual gravity,
I am not quite satisfied with you.
I desired to know what was wrong.
But will you promise to reform if I tell you?
Yes, if I can, and without offending a higher authority.
Ah, there it is. You see, you don't love me with all your heart.
I don't understand you, Arthur. At least I hope I don't. Pray tell me what I have done or said amiss.
It is nothing you have done or said. It is something that you are. You are too religious. Now, I like a woman to be religious, and I think your piety one of your greatest charms. But then, like all other good things, it may be carried too far. To my thinking, a woman's religion ought not to lessen her devotion to her earthly lord. She should have enough to purify and etherealize her soul, but not enough to refine away her heart and raise her above all human sympathies.
And am I above all human sympathies? Said I.
No, darling, but you are making more progress towards that saintly condition than I like. For all these 2 hours I have been thinking of you, and wanting to catch your eye, and you were so absorbed in your devotions that you had not even a glance to spare for me. I declare it is enough to make one jealous of one's maker, which is very wrong, you know. So don't excite such wicked passions again, for my soul's sake.
I will give my whole heart and soul to my Maker if I can, I answered, and not one atom more of it to you than he allows. What are you, sir, that you should set yourself up as a god, and presume to dispute possession of my heart with him to whom I owe all I have and all I am, every blessing I ever did or ever can enjoy, and yourself among the rest, if you are a blessing, which I am half inclined to doubt.
Don't be so hard upon me, Helen, and don't pinch my arm so you're squeezing your fingers into the bone.
Arthur, continued I, relaxing my hold of his arm, you don't love me half as much as I do you, and yet, if you loved me far less than you do, I would not complain, provided you loved your Maker more. I should rejoice to see you at any time so deeply absorbed in your devotions that you had not a single thought to spare for me. But indeed I should lose nothing by the change, for the more you loved your God, the more deep and pure and true would be your love to me. At this he only laughed and kissed my hand, calling me a sweet enthusiast. Then, taking off his hat, he added,
But look here, Helen, what can a man do with such a head as this?
The head looked right enough, but when he placed my hand on the top of it, it sunk in a bed of curls, rather alarmingly low, especially in the middle.
You see, I wasn't made to be a saint,
said he, laughing.
If God meant me to be religious, why didn't he give me proper organ of veneration?
You are like the servant, I replied, who, instead of employing his one talent in his master's service, restored it to him unimproved, alleging, as an excuse, that he knew him to be a hard man, reaping where he had not sown, and gathering where he had not strawed. Of him to whom less is given, less will be required, but our utmost exertions are required of us all. You are not without the capacity of veneration, and faith, and hope, and conscience, and reason, and every other requisite to a Christian's character, if you choose to employ them. But all our talents increase in the using, and every faculty, both good and bad, strengthens by exercise. Therefore, if you choose to use the bad, or those which tend to evil, till they become your masters, and neglect the good till they dwindle away, you have only yourself to blame. But you have talents, Arthur, natural endowments both of heart and mind and temper, such as many a better Christian would be glad to possess. If you would only employ them in God's service, I should never expect to see you a devotee, but it is quite possible to be a good Christian without ceasing to be a happy, merry-hearted man.
You speak like an oracle, Helen, and all you say is indisputably true, but listen here. I am hungry, and I see before me a good substantial dinner. I am told that if I abstain from this today, I shall have a sumptuous feast tomorrow, consisting of all manners of dainties and delicacies. Now, in the first place, I should be loth to wait till tomorrow when I have the means of appeasing my hunger already before me. In the second place, the solid viands of today are more to my taste than the dainties that are promised me. In the third place, I don't see tomorrow's banquet, and how can I tell that it is not all a fable, got up by the greasy-faced fellow that is advising me to abstain in order that he may have all the good victuals to himself? In the fourth place, this table must be spread for somebody, and as Solomon says, who can eat, or who else can hasten hereunto more than I? And finally, with your leave, I'll sit down and satisfy my craving of today, and leave tomorrow to shift for itself. Who knows but what I may secure both this and that?
But you are not required to abstain from the substantial dinner of today. You are only advised to partake of these coarser viands in such moderation as not to incapacitate you from enjoying the choicer banquet of tomorrow. If, regardless of that counsel, you choose to make a beast of yourself now, and overeat, and overdrink yourself till you turn the good victuals into poison, who is to blame if hereafter, while you are suffering the torments of yesterday's gluttony and drunkenness, you see more temperate men sitting down to enjoy themselves at that splendid entertainment which you are unable to taste?
Most true, my patron saint. But again our friend Solomon says, there is nothing better for a man than to eat, and to drink, and to be merry.
And again, returned I, he says, rejoice, O young man, in thy youth, and walk in the ways of thine heart, and in the sight of thine eyes. But know thou, that for all these things God will bring thee into judgment.
Well, but Helen, I am sure I've been very good these last few weeks. What have you seen amiss in me, and what would you have me to do?
Nothing more than you do, Arthur. Your actions are all right so far, but I would have your thoughts changed. I would have you to fortify yourself against temptation, and not to call evil good, and good evil. I should wish you to think more deeply, to look further, and aim higher than you do.
End of chapter 23. Chapter 24 of The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, by Anne Brontë. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
March 25th. Arthur is getting tired, not of me, I trust, but of the idle, quiet life he leads, and no wonder, for he has so few sources of amusement. He never reads anything but newspapers and sporting magazines, and when he sees me occupied with a book, he won't let me rest till I close it. In fine weather he generally manages to get through the time pretty well, but on rainy days, of which we have had a good many of late, it is quite painful to witness his ennui. I do all I can to amuse him, but it is impossible to get him to feel interested in what I most like to talk about, while, on the other hand, he likes to talk about things that cannot interest me, or even that annoy me, and these please him, the most of all. For his favourite amusement is to sit or loll beside me on the sofa, and tell me stories of his former amours, always turning upon the ruin of some confiding girl, or the cozening of some unsuspecting husband, and when I express my horror and indignation, he lays it all to the charge of jealousy, and laughs till the tears run down his cheeks. I used to fly into passions or melt into tears at first, but seeing that his delight increased in proportion to my anger and agitation, I have since endeavoured to suppress my feelings, and receive his revelations in the silence of calm contempt. But still he reads the inward struggle in my face, and misconstrues my bitterness of soul for his unworthiness into the pangs of wounded jealousy. And when he has sufficiently diverted himself with that, or fears my displeasure will become too serious for his comfort, he tries to kiss and soothe me into smiles again. Never were his caresses so little welcome as then. This is double selfishness displayed to me, and to the victims of his former love. There are times when, with a momentary pang, a flash of wild dismay, I ask myself, Helen, what have you done? But I rebuke the inward questioner, and repel the obtrusive thoughts that crowd upon me. For were he 10 times as sensual and impenetrable to good and lofty thoughts, I well know I have no right to complain. And I don't and won't complain. I do and will love him still, and I do not and will not regret that I have linked my fate with his. April 4th. We have had a downright quarrel. The particulars are as follows. Arthur had told me, at different intervals, the whole story of his intrigue with Lady F., which I would not believe before. It was some consolation, however, to find that in this instance the lady had been more to blame than he, for he was very young at the time, and she had decidedly made the first advances, if what he said was true. I hated her for it seemed as if she had chiefly contributed to his corruption, and when he was beginning to talk about her the other day, I begged he would not mention her, for I detested the very sound of her name. Not because you loved her, Arthur, mind, but because she injured you and deceived her husband, and was altogether a very abominable woman, whom you ought to be ashamed to mention. But he defended her by saying that she had a doting old husband whom it was impossible to love. Then why did she marry him? Said I.
For his money,
was the reply. Then that was another crime, and her solemn promise to love and honour him was another, that only increased the enormity of the last.
You are too severe upon the poor lady,
laughed he.
But never mind, Helen. I don't care for her now, and I never loved any of them half as much as I do you, so you needn't fear to be forsaken like them.
If you had told me these things before, Arthur, I never should have given you the chance.
Wouldn't you, my darling?
Most certainly not. He laughed incredulously. I wish I could convince you of it now, cried I, starting up from beside him, and for the first time in my life, and I hope the last, I wished I had not married him.
Helen,
said he, more gravely.
Do you know that if I believed you now I should be very angry? But thank heaven I don't. Though you stand there with your white face and flashing eyes looking at me like a very tigress, I know the heart within you perhaps a trifle better than you know it yourself.
Without another word I left the room, and locked myself up in my own chamber. In about half an hour he came to the door, and first he tried the handle, then he knocked.
Won't you let me in, Helen?
Said he. No, you have displeased me, I replied, and I don't want to see your face or hear your voice again till the morning. He paused a moment as if dumbfounded or uncertain how to answer such a speech, and then turned and walked away. This was only an hour after dinner. I knew he would find it very dull to sit alone all the evening, and this considerably softened my resentment, though it did not make me relent. I was determined to show him that my heart was not his slave, and I could live without him if I chose, and I sat down and wrote a long letter to my aunt, of course telling her nothing of all this. Soon after 10 o'clock I heard him come up again, but he passed my door and went straight to his own dressing-room, where he shut himself in for the night. I was rather anxious to see how he would meet me in the morning, and not a little disappointed to behold him enter the breakfast-room with a careless smile.
Are you cross still, Helen?
Said he, approaching as if to salute me. I coldly turned to the table, and began to pour out the coffee, observing that he was rather late. He uttered a low whistle and sauntered away to the window, where he stood for some minutes looking out upon the pleasing prospect of sullen grey clouds, streaming rain, soaking lawn, and dripping leafless trees, and muttering execrations on the weather, and then sat down to breakfast. While taking his coffee he muttered it was
damn cold.
You should not have left it so long, said I. He made no answer, and the meal was concluded in silence. It was a relief to both when the letter-bag was brought in. It contained, upon examination, a newspaper and 1 or 2 letters for him, and a couple of letters for me, which he tossed across the table without a remark. One was from my brother, the other from Millicent Hargrave, who is now in London with her mother. His, I think, were business letters, and apparently not much to his mind, for he crushed them into his pocket with some muttered expletives that I should have reproved him for at any other time. The paper he set before him, and pretended to be deeply absorbed in its contents during the remainder of breakfast, and a considerable time after. The reading and answering of my letters, and the direction of household concerns, afforded me ample employment for the morning. After lunch I got my drawing, and from dinner till bedtime I read. Meanwhile, poor Arthur was sadly at a loss for something to amuse him, or to occupy his time. He wanted to appear as busy and as unconcerned as I did. Had the weather at all permitted, he would doubtless have ordered his horse and set off to some distant region, no matter where, immediately after breakfast, and not return till night. Had there been a lady anywhere within reach, of any age between 15 and 45, he would have sought revenge and found employment in getting up, or trying to get up, a desperate flirtation with her. But being, to my private satisfaction, entirely cut off from both these sources of diversion, his sufferings were truly deplorable. When he had done yarning over his paper, and scribbling short answers to his shorter letters, he spent the remainder of the morning and the whole of the afternoon in fidgeting about from room to room, watching the clouds, cursing the rain, alternately petting and teasing and abusing his dogs, sometimes lounging on the sofa with a book that he could not force himself to read, and very often fixedly gazing at me when he thought I did not perceive it, with the vain hope of detecting some traces of tears, or some tokens of remorseful anguish in my face. But I managed to preserve an undisturbed though grave serenity throughout the day. I was not really angry. I felt for him all the time, and longed to be reconciled, but I determined he should make the first advances, or at least show some signs of a humble and contrite spirit first, for if I began, it would only minister to his self-conceit, increase his arrogance, and quite destroy the lesson I wanted to give him. He made a long stay in the dining-room after dinner, and I fear took an unusual quantity of wine, but not enough to loosen his tongue, for when he came in and found me quietly occupied with my book, too busy to lift my head on his entrance, he merely murmured an expression of suppressed disapprobation, and shutting the door with a bang, went and stretched himself at full length on the sofa, and composed himself to sleep. But his favourite cocker, Dash, that had been lying at my feet, took the liberty of jumping upon him and beginning to lick his face. He struck it off with a smart blow, and the poor dog squeaked and ran cowering back to me. When he woke up, about half an hour after, he called it to him again, but Dash only looked sheepish and wagged the tip of his tail. He called again more sharply, but Dash only clung the closer to me and licked my hand, as if imploring protection. Enraged at this, his master snatched up a heavy book and hurled it at his head. The poor dog set up a piteous outcry and ran to the door. I let him out, and then quietly took up the book.
"Give that book to me,"
said Arthur, in no very courteous tone. I gave it to him.
"Why did you let the dog out?"
he asked.
"You knew I wanted him."
"By what token?" I replied. "By your throwing the book at him. But perhaps it was intended for me."
"No, but I see you've got a taste of it,"
said he, looking at my hand, that had also been struck, and was rather severely grazed. I returned to my reading, and he endeavoured to occupy himself in the same manner, but in a little while, after several portentous yawns, he pronounced his book to be
"cursed trash,"
and threw it on the table. Then followed 8 or 10 minutes of silence, during the greater part of which, I believe, he was staring at me. At last his patience was tired out.
"What is that book, Helen?"
he exclaimed. I told him.
"Is it interesting?"
"Yes, very." I went on reading, or pretending to read, at least. I cannot say there was much communication between my eyes and my brain, for, while the former ran over the pages, the latter was earnestly wondering when Arthur would speak next, and what he would say, and what I should answer. But he did not speak again till I rose to make the tea, and then it was only to say he should not take any. He continued lounging on the sofa, and alternately closing his eyes, and looking at his watch, and at me, till bedtime, when I rose and took my candle and retired.
"Helen!"
cried he, the moment I had left the room. I turned back, and stood awaiting his commands. "What do you want, Arthur?" I said at length.
"Nothing,"
replied he.
"Go."
I went, but hearing him mutter something as I was closing the door, I turned again. It sounded very like
"Confounded slut."
but I was quite willing it should be something else. "Were you speaking, Arthur?" I asked.
"No,"
was the answer, and I shut the door and departed. I saw nothing more of him till the following morning at breakfast, when he came down a full hour after the usual time. "You're very late," was my morning salutation.
"You needn't have waited for me,"
was his, and he walked up to the window again. It was just such weather as yesterday.
"Oh, this confounded rain,"
he muttered. But after studiously regarding it for a minute or two, a bright idea seemed to strike him, for he suddenly exclaimed,
"But I know what I'll do,"
and then returned and took his seat at the table. The letter-bag was already there, waiting to be opened. He unlocked it and examined the contents, but said nothing about them. "Is there anything for me?" I asked.
"No."
He opened the newspaper and began to read. "You'd better take your coffee," suggested I. "It will be cold again."
"You may go,"
said he.
"If you've done, I don't want you."
I rose and withdrew to the next room, wondering if we were to have another such miserable day as yesterday, and wishing intensely for an end of these mutually inflicted torments. Shortly after I heard him ring the bell and give some orders about his wardrobe that sounded as if he meditated a long journey. He then sent for the coachman, and I heard something about the carriage and the horses, and London, and 7 o'clock to-morrow morning, that startled and disturbed me not a little. "I must not let him go to London, whatever comes of it," said I to myself. "He will run into all kinds of mischief, and I shall be the cause of it. But the question is, how am I to alter his purpose? Well, I will wait a while, and see if he mentions it." I waited most anxiously, from hour to hour, but not a word was spoken, on that or any other subject, to me. He whistled and talked to his dogs, and wandered from room to room, much the same as on the previous day. At last I began to think I must introduce the subject myself, and was pondering how to bring it about, when John unwittingly came to my relief with the following message from the coachman.
"Please, sir, Richard says one of the horses has a very bad cold, and he thinks, sir, if you could make it convenient to go the day after tomorrow instead of tomorrow, he could physic it today so as—"
"Confound his impudence!"
interjected the master.
"Please, sir, he says it would be a deal better if you could," persisted John, "for he hopes there will be a change in the weather shortly, and he says it's not likely, when a horse is so bad with a cold, and physicked and all."
"Devil take the horse!"
cried the gentleman.
"Well, tell him I'll think about it,"
he added, after a moment's reflection. He cast a searching glance at me, as the servant withdrew, expecting to see some token of deep astonishment and alarm; but, being previously prepared, I preserved an aspect of stoical indifference. His countenance fell as he met my steady gaze, and he turned away in very obvious disappointment, and walked up to the fireplace, where he stood in an attitude of undisguised dejection, leaning against the chimney-piece with his forehead sunk upon his arm. "Where do you want to go, Arthur?" said I.
"To London,"
replied he, gravely. "What for?" I asked.
"Because I cannot be happy here."
"Why not?"
"Because my wife doesn't love me."
"She would love you with all her heart, if you deserved it."
"What must I do to deserve it?"
This seemed humble and earnest enough, and I was so much affected, between sorrow and joy, that I was obliged to pause a few seconds before I could steady my voice to reply. "If she gives you her heart," said I, "you must take it thankfully, and use it well, and not pull it in pieces and laugh in her face, because she cannot snatch it away." He now turned round and stood facing me, with his back to the fire.
"Come then, Helen. Are you going to be a good girl?"
said he. This sounded rather too arrogant, and the smile that accompanied it did not please me. I therefore hesitated to reply. Perhaps my former answer had implied too much. He had heard my voice falter, and might have seen me brush away a tear.
"Are you going to forgive me, Helen?"
he resumed more humbly. "Are you penitent?" I replied, stepping up to him and smiling in his face.
"Heartbroken,"
he answered, with a rueful countenance, yet with a merry smile just lurking within his eyes and about the corners of his mouth. But this could not repulse me, and I flew into his arms. He fervently embraced me, and though I shed a torrent of tears, I think I never was happier in my life than at that moment. "Then you won't go to London, Arthur?" I said, when the first transport of tears and kisses had subsided.
"No, love, unless you will go with me."
"I will, gladly," I answered, "if you think the change will amuse you, and if you will put off the journey till next week." He readily consented, but said there was no need of much preparation, as he should not be for staying long, for he did not wish me to be Londonized, and to lose my country freshness and originality, by too much intercourse with the ladies of the world. I thought this folly, but I did not wish to contradict him now. I merely said that I was of very domestic habits, as he well knew, and had no particular wish to mingle with the world. So we are to go to London on Monday, the day after tomorrow. It is now 4 days since the termination of our quarrel, and I'm sure it has done us both good. It has made me like Arthur a great deal better, and made him behave a great deal better to me. He has never once attempted to annoy me since, by the most distant allusion to Lady F., or any of those disagreeable reminiscences of his former life. I wish I could blot them from my memory, or else get him to regard such matters in the same light as I do. Well, it is something, however, to have made him see that they are not fit subjects for a conjugal jest. He may see further some time. I will put no limits to my hopes, and in spite of my aunt's forebodings, and my own unspoken fears, I trust we shall be happy yet.
End of chapter 24. Chapter 25 of The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, by Anne Brontë. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
On the 8th of April we went to London. On the 8th of May I returned, in obedience to Arthur's wish, very much against my own, because I left him behind. If he had come with me, I should have been very glad to get home again, for he led me such a round of restless dissipation while there, that, in that short space of time, I was quite tired out. He seemed bent upon displaying me to his friends and acquaintances in particular, and the public in general, on every possible occasion, and to the greatest possible advantage. It was something to feel that he considered me a worthy object of pride, but I paid dear for the gratification, for, in the first place, to please him, I had to violate my cherished predilections, my almost rooted principles, in favour of a plain, dark, sober style of dress. I must sparkle in costly jewels and deck myself out like a painted butterfly, just as I had, long since, determined I would never do. And this was no trifling sacrifice. In the second place, I was continually straining to satisfy his sanguine expectations, and do honour to his choice by my general conduct and deportment, and fearing to disappoint him by some awkward misdemeanour, or some trait of inexperienced ignorance about the customs of society, especially when I acted the part of hostess, which I was not unfrequently called upon to do. And in the third place, as I intimated before, I was wearied of the throng and bustle, the restless hurry and ceaseless change of a life so alien to all my previous habits. At last he suddenly discovered that the London air did not agree with me, and I was languishing for my country home, and must immediately return to Grassdale. I laughingly assured him that the case was not so urgent as he appeared to think it, but I was quite willing to go home, if he was. He replied that he should be obliged to remain a week or two longer, as he had business that required his presence. "Then I will stay with you," said I.
"But I can't do it with you, Helen,"
was his answer.
"As long as you stay, I shall attend to you and neglect my business."
"But I won't let you," I returned. "Now that I know you have business to attend to, I shall insist upon your attending to it, and letting me alone. And, to tell the truth, I shall be glad of a little rest. I can take my rides and walks in the park as usual. And your business cannot occupy all your time. I shall see you at meal times, and in the evenings at least, and that will be better than being leagues away and never seeing you at all."
"But, my love, I cannot let you stay. How can I settle my affairs when I know that you are here, neglected?"
"I shall not feel myself neglected. While you are doing your duty, Arthur, I shall never complain of neglect. If you had told me before that you had anything to do, it would have been half done before this, and now you must make up for lost time by redoubled exertions. Tell me what it is, and I will be your taskmaster, instead of being a hindrance."
"No, no,"
persisted the impracticable creature.
"You must go home, Helen. I must have the satisfaction of knowing that you are safe and well, though far away. Your bright eyes are faded, and that tender, delicate bloom has quite deserted your cheek."
"That is only with too much gaiety and fatigue."
"It is not, I tell you. It is the London air. You are pining for fresh breezes of your country home, and you shall feel them before you are 2 days older. And remember your situation, dearest Helen. On your health, you know, depends the health, if not the life, of our future hope."
"Then you really wish to get rid of me?"
"Positively I do. And I will take you down myself to Grassdale, and then return. I shall not be absent above a week or fortnight at most."
"But if I must go, I will go alone. If you must stay, it is needless to waste your time in the journey there and back." But he did not like the idea of sending me alone. "Why, what helpless creature do you take me for?" I replied, "that you cannot trust me to go 100 miles in our own carriage, with our own footman, and a maid to attend me? If you come with me, I shall assuredly keep you. But tell me, Arthur, what is this tiresome business, and why did you never mention it before?"
"It is only a little business with my lawyer,"
said he, and he told me something about a piece of property he wanted to sell, in order to pay off a part of the encumbrances on his estate, but either the account was a little confused, or I was rather dull of comprehension, for I could not clearly understand how that should keep him in town a fortnight after me. Still less can I now comprehend how it should keep him a month, for it is nearly that time since I left him, and no signs of his return as yet. In every letter he promises to be with me in a few days, and every time deceives me, or deceives himself. His excuses are vague and insufficient. I cannot doubt that he has got among his former companions again. Oh, why did I leave him? I do intensely wish he would return. June 29th. No Arthur yet, and for many days I have been looking and longing in vain for a letter. His letters, when they come, are kind, if fair words and endearing epithets can give them a claim to the title, but very short, and full of trivial excuses and promises that I cannot trust. And yet how anxiously I look forward to them! How eagerly I open and devour one of those little hastily scribbled returns for the 3 or 4 long letters, hitherto unanswered, he has had from me! Oh, it is cruel to leave me so long alone! He knows I have no one but Rachel to speak to, for we have no neighbours here, except the Hargraves, whose residence I can dimly descry from these upper windows embosomed among those low woody hills beyond the dale. I was glad when I learnt that Millicent was so near us, and her company would be a soothing solace to me now. But she is still in town with her mother. There is no one at the Grove but little Esther, and her French governess, for Walter is always away. I saw that paragon of manly perfections in London. He seemed scarcely to merit the eulogiums of his mother and sister, though he certainly appeared more conversable and agreeable than Lord Loughborough, more candid and high-minded than Mr. Grimsby, and more polished and gentlemanly than Mr. Hattersley, Arthur's only other friend whom he judged fit to introduce to me. Oh, Arthur, why won't you come? Why won't you write to me at least? You talked about my health. How can you expect me to gather bloom and vigour here, pining in solitude and restless anxiety from day to day? It would serve you right to come back and find my good looks entirely wasted away. I would beg my uncle and aunt, or my brother, to come and see me, but I do not like to complain of my loneliness to them. And indeed, loneliness is the least of my sufferings. But what is he doing? What is it that keeps him away? It is this ever-recurring question, and the horrible suggestions it raises, that distract me. July 3rd. My last bitter letter has wrung from him an answer at last, and a rather longer one than usual. But still I don't know what to make of it. He playfully abuses me for the gall and vinegar of my latest effusion, tells me I can have no conception of the multitudinous engagements that keep him away, but avers that, in spite of them all, he will assuredly be with me before the close of next week, though it is impossible for a man so circumstanced as he is to fix the precise day of his return. Meantime, he exhorts me to the exercise of patience,
that first of women's virtues,
and desires me to remember the saying,
absence makes the heart grow fonder,
and comfort myself with the assurance that the longer he stays away the better he shall love me when he returns. Until he does return, he begs I will continue to write to him constantly, for though he is sometimes too idle, and often too busy to answer my letters as they come, he likes to receive them daily, and if I fulfil my threat of punishing his seeming neglect by ceasing to write, he shall be so angry that he will do his utmost to forget me. He adds this piece of intelligence respecting poor Millicent Hargrave.
Your little friend Millicent is likely before long to follow your example, and take upon her the yoke of matrimony in conjunction with a friend of mine. Hattersley, you know, has not yet fulfilled his direful threat of throwing his precious person away on the first old maid that chose to evince a tenderness for him, but he still perceives a resolute determination to see himself a married man before the year is out.
Only,
said he to me,
I must have somebody that will let me have my own way in everything. Not like your wife, Huntingdon. She is a charming creature, but she looks as if she had a will of her own, and could play the vixen upon occasion.
I thought you right there, man, but I didn't say so.
I must have some good, quiet soul, that will let me do just what I like, and go where I like, keep at home or stay away, without a word of reproach or complaint, for I can't do with being bothered.
Well, said I know somebody that will suit you to a T, if you don't care for money, and that's Hargrave's sister Millicent. He desired to be introduced to her forthwith, for he said he had plenty of the needful himself, or should have when his old governor chose to quit the stage. So you see, Helen, I have managed pretty well both for your friend and mine.
Poor Millicent! But I cannot imagine she will ever be led to accept such a suitor, one so repugnant to all her ideas of a man to be honoured and loved. 5th. Alas! I was mistaken. I have got a long letter from her this morning, telling me she is already engaged, and expects to be married before the close of the month.
I hardly know what to say about it,
she writes,
or what to think. To tell you the truth, Helen, I don't like the thought of it at all. If I am to be Mr. Hattersley's wife, I must try to love him, and I do try with all my might. But I have made very little progress yet, and the worst symptom of the case is, that the further he is from me, the better I like him. He frightens me with his abrupt manners and strange hectoring ways, and I dread the thought of marrying him. Then why have you accepted him, you will ask, and I didn't know I had accepted him, but mamma tells me I have, and he seems to think so too. I certainly didn't mean to do so, but I did not like to give him a flat refusal, for fear mamma should be grieved and angry, for I knew she wished me to marry him, and I wanted to talk to her first about it. So I gave him what I thought was an evasive, half-negative answer. But she says it was as good as an acceptable, and he would think me very capricious if I were to attempt to draw back. and indeed I was so confused and frightened at the moment I can hardly tell what I said. And next time I saw him he accosted me in all confidence of his officiated bride, and immediately began to settle matters with mamma. I had not courage to contradict them then, and how can I do it now? I cannot. They would think me mad. Besides, mamma is so delighted with the idea of the match. She thinks she has managed so well for me, and I cannot bear to disappoint her. I do object sometimes, and I tell her what I feel, but you don't know how she talks. Mr. Hattersley, you know, is the son of a rich banker, and as Esther and I have no fortunes, and Walter very little, our dear mamma is very anxious to see us all well married, that is, united to rich partners. It is not my idea of being well married, but she means it all for the best. She says when I am safe off her hands it will be such a relief to her mind, and she assures me it will be a good thing for the family as well as for me. Even Walter is pleased at the prospect, and when I confessed my reluctance to him, he said it was all childish nonsense. Do you think it's nonsense, Helen? I should not care if I could see any prospect of being able to love and admire him, but I can't. There is nothing about him to hang one's esteem and affection upon. He is so diametrically opposite to what I imagined my husband should be. Do write me, and say all you can to encourage me. Don't attempt to dissuade me, for my fate is fixed. Preparations for the important events are already going on around me, and don't say a word against Mr. Hattersley, for I want to think well of him, and though I have spoken against him myself, it is the last time. Hereafter I shall never permit myself to utter a word in his dispraise, however he may seem to deserve it, and whoever ventures to speak slightingly of the man I have promised to love, to honour, and obey, must expect my serious displeasure. After all, I think he is quite as good as Mr. Huntingdon, if not better, and yet you love him, and seem to be happy and contented. And perhaps I may manage as well. You must tell me, if you can, that Mr. Hattersley is better than he seems, that he is upright, honourable, and open-hearted, in fact, a perfect diamond in the rough. He may be all this, but I don't know him. I know only the exterior, and what, I trust, is the worst part of him.
She concludes with,
Good-bye, dear Helen. I am waiting anxiously for your advice. But mind you let it be all on the right side.
Alas, poor Millicent! What encouragement can I give you? Or what advice? Except that it is better to make a bold stand now, though at the expense of disappointing and angering both mother, and brother, and lover, than to devote your whole life hereafter to misery and vain regret. Saturday, 13th. The week is over, and he is not come. All the sweet summer is passing away without one breath of pleasure to me or benefit to him, and I had all along been looking forward to this season with the fond delusive hope that we should enjoy it so sweetly together, and that, with God's help and my exertions, it would be the means of elevating his mind and refining his taste to a due appreciation of the salutary and pure delights of nature, and peace, and holy love. But now, at evening, when I see the round red sun sink quietly down behind those woody hills, leaving them sleeping in a warm, red, golden haze, I only think another lovely day is lost to him and me. And at morning, when roused by the flutter and chirp of the sparrows, and the gleeful twitter of the swallows, all intent upon feeding their young, and full of life and joy in their own little frames, I open the window to inhale the balmy, soul-reviving air, and look out upon the lovely landscape, laughing in dew and sunshine. I too often shame that glorious scene with tears of thankless misery, because he cannot feel its freshening influence, and when I wander in the ancient woods, and meet the little wildflowers smiling in my path, or sit in the shadow of our noble ash-trees by the water-side, with their branches gently swaying in the light summer breeze that murmurs through their feathery foliage, my ears full of that low music mingled with the dreamy hum of insects, my eyes abstractedly gazing on the glassy surface of the little lake before me, with the trees that crowd about its bank, some gracefully bending to kiss its waters, some rearing their stately heads high above, but stretching their wide arms over its margin, all faithfully mirrored far, far down in its glassy depth, though sometimes the images are partially broken by the sport of aquatic insects, and sometimes, for a moment, the whole is shivered into trembling fragments by a transient breeze that sweeps the surface too roughly. Still I have no pleasure, for the greater the happiness that nature sets before me, the more I lament that he is not here to taste it, the greater the bliss we might enjoy together, the more I feel our present wretchedness apart. Yes, ours. He must be wretched, though he may not know it. And the more my senses are pleased, the more my heart is oppressed. For he keeps it with him confined amid the dust and smoke of London, perhaps shut up within the walls of his own abominable club. But most of all, at night, when I enter my lonely chamber, and look out upon the summer moon, sweet regent of the sky, floating above me in the black blue vault of heaven, shedding a flood of silver radiance over park and wood and water, so pure, so peaceful, so divine, and think, where is he now? What is he doing at this moment? Wholly unconscious of this heavenly scene, perhaps revelling with his boon companions, perhaps, God help me, it is too much. 23rd. Thank heaven he is come at last! But how altered! Flushed and feverish, listless and languid, his beauty strangely diminished, his vigour and vivacity quite departed. I have not upbraided him by word or look. I have not even asked him what he has been doing. I have not the heart to do it, for I think he is ashamed of himself. He must be so indeed, and such inquiries could not fail to be painful to both. My forbearance pleases him, touches him even, I am inclined to think. He says he is glad to be home again, and God knows how glad I am to get him back, even as he is. He lies on the sofa nearly all day long, and I play and sing to him for hours together. I write his letters for him, and get him everything he wants, and sometimes I read to him, and sometimes I talk, and sometimes only sit by him and soothe him with silent caresses. I know he does not deserve it, and I fear I am spoiling him. But this once, I will forgive him, freely and entirely. I will shame him into virtue if I can, and I will never let him leave me again. He is pleased with my attentions, it may be, grateful for them. He likes to have me near him, and though he is peevish and testy with his servants and his dogs, he is gentle and kind to me. What would he be, if I did not so watchfully anticipate his wants, and so carefully avoid, or immediately desist from doing, anything that has a tendency to irritate or disturb him, with however little reason? I cannot tell. How intensely I wish he were worthy of all this care! Last night, as I sat beside him, with his head in my lap, passing my fingers through his beautiful curls, this thought made my eyes overflow with sorrowful tears, as it often does. But this time a tear fell on his face and made him look up. He smiled, but not insultingly.
"Dear Helen,"
he said,
"why do you cry? You know that I love you."
And he pressed my hand to his feverish lips.
"And what more could you desire?"
"Only, Arthur, that you would love yourself as truly and as faithfully as you are loved by me."
"That would be hard, indeed," he
replied, tenderly squeezing my hand. August 24th. Arthur is himself again, as lusty and reckless, as light of heart and head as ever, and as restless and hard to amuse as a spoilt child, and almost as full of mischief too, especially when wet weather keeps him within doors. I wish he had something to do, some useful trade, or profession, or employment, anything to occupy his head or his hands for a few hours a day, and give him something besides his own pleasure to think about. If he would play the country gentleman, and attend to the farm, but that he knows nothing about, and won't give his mind to consider. Or if he would take up with some literary study, or learn to draw, or to play. As he is so fond of music, I often try to persuade him to learn the piano, but he is far too idle for such an undertaking. He has no more idea of exerting himself to overcome obstacles than he has of restraining his natural appetites, and these two things are the ruin of him. I lay them both to the charge of his harsh yet careless father, and his madly indulgent mother. If ever I am a mother, I will zealously strive against this crime of overindulgence. I can hardly give it a milder name when I think of the evils it brings. Happily, it will soon be the shooting season, and then, if the weather permit, he will find occupation enough in the pursuit and destruction of the partridges and pheasants. We have no grouse, or he might have been similarly occupied at this moment, instead of lying under the acacia tree pulling poor Dash's ears. But he says it is dull work shooting alone. He must have a friend or two to help him. "Let them be tolerably decent, then, Arthur," said I. The word friend in his mouth makes me shudder. I know it was some of his friends that induced him to stay behind me in London, and kept him away so long. Indeed, from what he has unguardedly told me, or hinted from time to time, I cannot doubt that he frequently showed them my letters, to let them see how fondly his wife watched over his interests, and how keenly she regretted his absence, and that they induced him to remain week after week, and to plunge into all manner of excesses, to avoid being laughed at for a wife-ridden fool, and, perhaps, to show how far he could venture to go without danger of shaking the fond creature's devoted attachment. It is a hateful idea, but I cannot believe it is a false one.
Well,
replied he,
I thought of Lord Loughborough for one, but there is no possibility of getting him without his better half, our mutual friend Annabella, so we must ask them both. You're not afraid of her, are you, Helen?
he asked, with a mischievous twinkle in his eyes. Of course not, I answered. Why should I? And who besides?
Hargrave for one. He will be glad to come, though his own place is so near, for he has little enough land of his own to shoot over, and we can extend our depredations into it if we like. And he is thoroughly respectable, you know, Helen, quite a lady's man, and I think, Grimsby for another, he is a decent, quiet fellow enough. You'll not object to Grimsby?
I hate him. But, however, if you wish it, I'll try to endure his presence for a while.
All a prejudice, Helen, a mere woman's antipathy.
No, I have solid grounds for my dislike. And is that all?
Why, yes, I think so. Naturally will be too busy billing and cooing with his bride to have much time to spare for guns and dogs at present,
he replied. And that reminds me that I have had several letters from Millicent since her marriage, and that she either is, or pretends to be, quite reconciled to her lot. She professes to have discovered numberless virtues and perfections in her husband, some of which, I fear, less partial eyes would fail to distinguish, though they sought them carefully with tears. And now that she is accustomed to his loud voice, and abrupt, uncourteous manners, she affirms she finds no difficulty in loving him as a wife should do, and begs I will burn that letter wherein she spoke so unadvisedly against him. So that I trust she may yet be happy. But, if she is, it will be entirely the reward of her own goodness of heart, for had she chosen to consider herself the victim of fate, or of her mother's worldly wisdom, she might have been thoroughly miserable. And if, for duty's sake, she had not made every effort to love her husband, she would, doubtless, have hated him to the end of her days.
End of chapter 25. Chapter 26 of The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, by Anne Brontë. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
September 23rd. Our guests arrived about 3 weeks ago. Lord and Lady Loughborough have now been married above 8 months, and I will do the lady the credit to say that her husband is quite an altered man. His looks, his spirit, and his temper are all perceptibly changed for the better since I last saw him. But there is room for improvement still. He is not always cheerful, nor always contented, and she often complains of his ill humour, which, however, of all persons, she ought to be the last to accuse him of, as he never displays it against her, except for such conduct as would provoke a saint. He adores her still, and would go to the world's end to please her. She knows her power, and she uses it too. But well knowing that to wheedle and coax is safer than to command, she judiciously tempers her despotism with flattery and blandishments enough to make him deem himself a favoured and a happy man. But she has a way of tormenting him, in which I am a fellow-sufferer, or might be, if I chose to regard myself as such. This is by openly, but not too glaringly, coquetting with Mr. Huntingdon, who is quite willing to be her partner in the game. But I don't care for it, because with him I know there is nothing but personal vanity, and a mischievous desire to excite my jealousy, and, perhaps, to torment his friend, and she, no doubt, is actuated by much the same motives, only there is more of malice and less of playfulness in her manoeuvres. It is obviously, therefore, my interest to disappoint them both, as far as I am concerned, by preserving a cheerful, undisturbed serenity throughout; and, accordingly, I endeavour to show the fullest confidence in my husband, and the greatest indifference to the arts of my attractive guest. I have never reproached the former but once, and that was for laughing at Lord Loughborough's depressed and anxious countenance one evening, when they had both been particularly provoking; and then, indeed, I said a good deal on the subject, and rebuked him sternly enough, but he only laughed and said,
"You can feel for him, Helen, can't you?"
"I can feel for any one that is unjustly treated," I replied, "and I can feel for those that injure them too."
"Why, Helen, you're as jealous as he is,"
cried he, laughing still more, and I found it impossible to convince him of his mistake. So, from that time, I have carefully refrained from any notice of the subject whatever, and left Lord Loughborough to take care of himself. He either has not the sense or the power to follow my example, though he does try to conceal his uneasiness as well as he can; but still it will appear in his face, and his ill humour will peep out at intervals, though not in the expression of open resentment. They never go far enough for that. But I confess I do feel jealous at times, most painfully, bitterly so, when she sings and plays to him, and he hangs over the instrument, and dwells upon her voice with no affected interest, for then I know he is really delighted, and I have no power to awaken similar fervour. I can amuse and please him with my simple songs, but not delight him thus. 28th. Yesterday we all went to the Grove, Mr. Hargrave's much neglected home. His mother frequently asks us over, that she may have the pleasure of her dear Walter's company, and this time she had invited us to a dinner party, and got together as many of the country gentry as were within reach to meet us. The entertainment was very well got up, but I could not help thinking about the cost of it all the time. I don't like Mrs. Hargrave. She is a hard, pretentious, worldly-minded woman. She has money enough to live very comfortably, if she only knew how to use it judiciously, and had taught her son to do the same. But she is ever straining to keep up appearances, with that despicable pride that shuns the semblance of poverty as of a shameful crime. She grinds her dependents, pinches her servants, and deprives even her daughters and herself of the real comforts of life, because she will not consent to yield the palm in outward show to those who have 3 times her wealth, and above all, because she is determined her cherished son shall be enabled to
hold up his head with the highest gentleman in the land.
This same son, I imagine, is a man of expensive habits, no reckless spendthrift, and no abandoned sensualist, but one who likes to have everything handsome about him, and to go to a certain length in youthful indulgences, not so much to gratify his own tastes as to maintain his reputation as a man of fashion in the world, and a respectable fellow among his own lawless companions, while he is too selfish to consider how many comforts might be obtained for his fond mother and sisters with the money he thus wastes upon himself. As long as they can contrive to make a respectable appearance once a year, when they come to town, he gives himself little concern about their private stintings and struggles at home. This is a harsh judgment to form of dear, noble-minded, generous-hearted Walter, but I fear it is too just. Mrs. Hargrave's anxiety to make good matches for her daughters is partly the cause, and partly the result, of these errors. By making a figure in the world, and showing them off to advantage, she hopes to obtain better chances for them, and by thus living beyond her legitimate means, and lavishing so much on their brother, she renders them portionless, and makes them burdens on her hands. Poor Millicent, I fear, has already fallen a sacrifice to the manoeuvrings of this mistaken mother, who congratulates herself on having so satisfactorily discharged her maternal duty, and hopes to do as well for Esther. But Esther is a child as yet, a little merry romp of 14, as honest-hearted and as guileless and simple as her sister, but with a fearless spirit of her own, that I fancy her mother will find some difficulty in bending to her purposes.
End of chapter 26. Chapter 27 of The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, by Anne Brontë. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
October 9th. It was on the night of the 4th, a little after tea, that Annabella had been singing and playing, with Arthur, as usual, at her side. She had ended her song, but still she sat at the instrument, and he stood leaning on the back of her chair, conversing in scarcely audible tones, with his face in very close proximity with hers. I looked at Lord Loughborough. He was at the other end of the room, talking with Messrs. Hargrave and Grimsby, but I saw him dart towards his lady and his host a quick, impatient glance, expressive of intense disquietude, at which Grimsby smiled. Determined to interrupt the tete-a-tete, I rose, and selecting a piece of music from the music-stand, stepped up to the piano, intending to ask the lady to play it, but I stood transfixed and speechless on seeing her seated there, listening, with what seemed an exultant smile on her flushed face, to his soft murmurings, with her hand quietly surrendered to his clasp. The blood rushed first to my heart, and then to my head, for there was more than this. Almost at the moment of my approach, he cast a hurried glance over his shoulder towards the other occupants of the room, and then ardently pressed the unresisting hand to his lips. On raising his eyes, he beheld me, and dropped them again, confounded and dismayed. She saw me too, and confronted me with a look of hard defiance. I laid the music on the piano, and retired. I felt ill, but I did not leave the room. Happily, it was getting late, and could not be long before the company dispersed. I went to the fire, and leant my head against the chimney-piece. In a minute or two, someone asked me if I felt unwell. I did not answer. Indeed, at the time, I knew not what was said, but I mechanically looked up, and saw Mr. Hargrave standing beside me on the rug.
"Shall I get you a glass of wine?"
said he. "No, thank you," I replied, and turning from him, I looked round. Lady Loughborough was beside her husband, bending over him as he sat, with her hand on his shoulder, softly talking and smiling in his face. And Arthur was at the table, turning over a book of engravings. I seated myself in the nearest chair, and Mr. Hargrave, finding his services were not desired, judiciously withdrew. Shortly after, the company broke up, and as the guests were retiring to their rooms, Arthur approached me, smiling with the utmost assurance.
"Are you very angry, Helen?"
murmured he. "This is no jest, Arthur," said I, seriously, but as calmly as I could. "Unless you think it a jest to lose my affection for ever."
"What, so bitter?"
he exclaimed, laughingly, clasping my hand between both his, but I snatched it away, in indignation, almost in disgust, for he was obviously affected with wine.
"Then I must go down on my knees,"
said he, and kneeling before me, with clasped hands, uplifted in mock humiliation, he continued imploringly,
"Forgive me, Helen. Dear Helen, forgive me, and I'll never do it again."
And burying his face in his handkerchief, he affected to sob aloud. Leaving him thus employed, I took my candle, and slipping quietly from the room, hastened upstairs as fast as I could. But he soon discovered that I had left him, and rushing up after me, caught me in his arms, just as I had entered the chamber, and was about to shut the door in his face.
"No, no, by heaven, you shan't escape me so!"
he cried. Then, alarmed at my agitation, he begged me not to put myself in such a passion, telling me I was white in the face and should kill myself if I did so. "Let me go, then," I murmured, and immediately he released me. And it was well he did, for I was really in a passion. I sank into the easy-chair, and endeavoured to compose myself, for I wanted to speak to him calmly. He stood beside me, but did not venture to touch me, or to speak for a few seconds. Then, approaching a little nearer, he dropped on one knee, not in mock humility, but to bring himself nearer my level, and leaning his hand on the arm of the chair, he began in a low voice,
"It is all nonsense, Helen, a jest, a mere nothing, not worth a thought. Will you never learn,"
he continued more boldly,
"that you have nothing to fear from me, that I love you wholly and entirely, or if,"
he added with a lurking smile,
"I ever give a thought to another, you may well spare it, for those fancies are here and gone like a flash of lightning, while my love for you burns on steadily, and forever, like the sun. You little exorbitant tyrant, will not that—"
"Be quiet a moment, will you, Arthur?" said I, "and listen to me. And don't think I'm in a jealous fury. I am perfectly calm. Feel my hand." And I gravely extended it towards him, but closed it upon his with an energy that seemed to disprove the assertion, and made him smile. "You needn't smile, sir," said I, still tightening my grasp, and looking steadfastly on him till he almost quailed before me. "You may think it all very fine, Mr. Huntingdon, to amuse yourself with rousing my jealousy. But take care you don't rouse my hate instead, and when you have once extinguished my love, you will find it no easy matter to kindle it again."
"Well, Helen, I won't repeat the offence. But I meant nothing by it, I assure you. I had taken too much wine. I was scarcely myself at the time."
"You often take too much, and that is another practice I detest." He looked up astonished at my warmth. "Yes," I continued, "I never mentioned it before, because I was ashamed to do so. But now I'll tell you that it distresses me, and may disgust me, if you go on and suffer the habit to grow upon you, as it will if you don't check it in time. But the whole system of your conduct to Lady Loughborough is not referable to wine, and this night you knew perfectly well what you were doing."
"Well, I'm sorry for it,"
replied he, with more of sulkiness than contrition.
"What more would you have?"
"You are sorry that I saw you, no doubt," I answered coldly.
"If you had not seen me,"
he muttered, fixing his eyes on the carpet,
"it would have done no harm."
My heart felt ready to burst, but I resolutely swallowed back my emotion, and answered calmly, "You think not?"
"No,"
replied he boldly.
"After all, what have I done? It's nothing, except as you choose to make it a subject of accusation and distress."
"What would Lord Loughborough, your friend, think if he knew all? Or what would you yourself think, if he or any other had acted the same part to me, throughout, as you have to Annabella?"
"I would blow his brains out."
"Well then, Arthur, how can you call it nothing? an offence for which you would think yourself justified in blowing another man's brains out? Is it nothing to trifle with your friend's feelings, and mine? To endeavour to steal a woman's affections from her husband, what he values more than his gold, and therefore what it is more dishonest to take? Are the marriage vows a jest, and is it nothing to make it your sport to break them, and to tempt another to do the same? Can I love a man that does such things, and coolly maintains it as nothing?"
"You are breaking your marriage vows yourself,"
said he, indignantly rising and pacing to and fro.
"You promised to honor and obey me, and now you attempt to hector over me, and threaten and accuse me, and call me worse than a highwayman. If it were not for your situation, Helen, I would not submit to it so tamely. I won't be dictated by a woman, though she be my wife."
"What will you do, then? Will you go on till I hate you, and then accuse me of breaking my vows?" He was silent a moment, and then replied,
"You never will hate me."
Returning and resuming his former position at my feet, he repeated more vehemently,
"You cannot hate me, as long as I love you."
"But how can I believe that you love me, if you continue to act in this way? Just imagine yourself in my place. Would you think I loved you, if I did so? Would you believe my protestations, and honour and trust me under such circumstances?"
"The cases are different,"
he replied.
"It is a woman's nature to be constant, to love one, and one only, blindly, tenderly, and forever. Bless them, dear creatures, and you above them all. But you must have some commiseration for us, Helen. You must give us a little more license, for as Shakespeare has it, however we do praise ourselves, our fancies are more giddy and unfirm, more longing, wavering, sooner lost and won, than women's are."
"Do you mean by that your fancies are lost to me, and won by Lady Loughborough?"
"No. Heaven is my witness that I think her mere dust and ashes in comparison with you, and shall continue to think so, unless you drive me from you by too much severity. She is a daughter of earth, you are an angel of heaven. Only be not too austere in your divinity, and remember that I am a poor, fallible mortal. Come now, Helen, won't you forgive me?"
he said, gently taking my hand, and looking up with an innocent smile. "If I do, you will repeat the offence."
"I swear by—"
"Don't swear. I'll believe your word as well as your oath. I wish I could have confidence in either."
"Try me then, Helen. Only trust and pardon me this once, and you shall see. Come, I am in hell's torment till you speak the word."
I did not speak it, but I put my hand on his shoulder, and kissed his forehead, and then burst into tears. He embraced me tenderly, and we have been good friends ever since. He has been decently temperate at table, and well conducted towards Lady Loughborough. The first day he held himself aloof from her, as far as he could without any flagrant breach of hospitality. Since that he has been friendly and civil, but nothing more, in my presence at least, nor, I think, at any other time, for she seems haughty and displeased, and Lord Loughborough is manifestly more cheerful and more cordial towards his host than before. But I shall be glad when they are gone, for I have so little love for Annabella, that it is quite a task to be civil to her, and as she is the only woman here besides myself, we are necessarily thrown so much together. Next time Mrs. Hargrave calls, I shall hail her advent as quite a relief. I have a good mind to ask Arthur's leave to invite the old lady to stay with us till our guests depart. I think I will. She will take it as a kind attention, and though I have little relish for her society, she will be truly welcome as a third to stand between Lady Loughborough and me. The first time the latter and I were alone together, after that unhappy evening, was an hour or two after breakfast on the following day, when the gentlemen were gone out, after the usual time spent in the writing of letters, the reading of newspapers, and desultory conversation. We sat silent for 2 or 3 minutes. She was busy with her work, and I was running over the columns of a paper from which I had extracted all the pith some 20 minutes before. It was a moment of painful embarrassment to me, and I thought it must be infinitely more so to her. But it seems I was mistaken. She was the first to speak, and smiling with the coolest assurance, she began,
"Your husband was merry last night, Helen. Is he often so?"
My blood boiled in my face, but it was better she should seem to attribute his conduct to this than to anything else. "No," replied I, "and never will be so again, I trust."
"You gave him a curtain lecture, did you?"
"No, but I told him I disliked such conduct, and he promised me not to repeat it."
"I thought he looked rather subdued this morning,"
she continued.
"And you, Helen, you've been weeping, I see. That's our grand resource, you know. But doesn't it make your eyes smart? And do you always find it to answer?"
"I never cry for effect, nor can I conceive how anyone can."
"Well, I don't know. I never had occasion to try it. But I think if Loughborough were to commit such improprieties, I'd make him cry. I don't wonder at your being angry, for I'm sure I'd give my husband a lesson he would not soon forget for a lighter offence than that. But then he never will do anything of the kind, for I keep him in too good order for that.
Are you sure you don't arrogate too much of the credit to yourself? Lord Loughborough was quite as remarkable for his abstemiousness for some time before you married him, as he is now, I have heard.
Oh, about the wine, you mean? Yes, he's safe enough for that. And as to looking askance to another woman, he's safe enough for that too while I live, for he worships the very ground I tread on.
Indeed? And are you sure you deserve it?
Why, as to that, I can't say. You know we're all fallible creatures, Helen. We none of us deserve to be worshipped. But are you sure your darling Huntingdon deserves all the love you give to him?
I knew not what to answer to this. I was burning with anger, but I suppressed all outward manifestations of it, and only bit my lip, and pretended to arrange my work.
At any rate,
resumed she, pursuing her advantage,
you can console yourself with the assurance that you are worthy of all the love he gives to you.
You flatter me, said I, but, at least, I can try to be worthy of it. And then I turned the conversation.
End of chapter 27. Chapter 28 of The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, by Anne Brontë. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
December 25th. Last Christmas I was a bride, with a heart overflowing with present bliss, and full of ardent hopes for the future, though not unmingled with foreboding fears. Now I am a wife. My bliss is sobered, but not destroyed. My hopes diminished, but not departed. My fears increased, but not yet thoroughly confirmed. And, thank heaven, I am a mother too. God has sent me a soul to educate for heaven, and give me a new and calmer bliss, and stronger hopes to comfort me. December 25th, 1823. Another year is gone. My little Arthur lives and thrives. He is healthy, but not robust, full of gentle playfulness and vivacity, already affectionate, and susceptible of passions and emotions it will be long ere he can find words to express. He has won his father's heart at last, and now my constant terror is, lest he should be ruined by that father's thoughtless indulgence. But I must beware of my own weakness too, for I never knew till now how strong are a parent's temptations to spoil an only child. I have need of consolation in my son, for, to this silent paper I may confess it, I have but little in my husband. I love him still, and he loves me, in his own way. But oh, how different from the love I could have given, and once had hoped to receive! How little real sympathy there exists between us! How many of my thoughts and feelings are gloomily cloistered within my own mind! How much of my higher and better self is indeed unmarried, doomed either to harden and sour in the sunless shade of solitude, or to quite degenerate and fall away for lack of nutriment in this unwholesome soil! But, I repeat, I have no right to complain. Only let me state the truth, some of the truth, at least, and see hereafter if any darker truths will blot these pages. We have now been full 2 years united. The romance of our attachment must be worn away. Surely I have now got down to the lowest gradation in Arthur's affection, and discovered all the evils of his nature. If there be any further change, it must be for the better, as we become still more accustomed to each other. Surely we shall find no lower depth than this. And if so, I can bear it well. As well, at least, as I have borne it hitherto. Arthur is not what is commonly called a bad man. He has many good qualities, but he is a man without self-restraint or lofty aspirations, a lover of pleasure, given up to animal enjoyments. He's not a bad husband, but his notions of matrimonial duties and comforts are not my notions. Judging from appearances, his idea of a wife is a thing to love one devotedly, and to stay at home to wait upon her husband, and amuse him, and minister to his comfort in every possible way, while he chooses to stay with her, and, when he is absent, to attend to his interests, domestic or otherwise, and patiently wait his return, no matter how he may be occupied in the meantime. Early in spring he announced his intention of going to London. His affairs there demanded his attendance, he said, and he could refuse it no longer. He expressed his regret at having to leave me, but hoped I would amuse myself with the baby till he returned. "But why leave me?" I said. "I can go with you. I can be ready at any time."
You would not take the child to town?
Yes, why not? The thing was absurd. The air of the town would be certain to disagree with him, and with me as a nurse. The late hours and London habits would not suit me, under such circumstances, and altogether he assured me that it would be excessively troublesome, injurious, and unsafe. I overruled his objections as well as I could, for I trembled at the thoughts of his going alone, and would sacrifice almost anything for myself, much even for my child, to prevent it. But at length he told me plainly, and somewhat testily, that he could not do with me. He was worn out with the baby's restless nights, and must have some repose. I proposed separate apartments, but it would not do. "The truth is, Arthur," I said at last, "you are weary of my company, and determined not to have me with you. You might as well have said so at once." He denied it, but I immediately left the room, and flew to the nursery, to hide my feelings, if I could not soothe them there. I was too much hurt to express any further dissatisfaction with his plans, or at all to refer to the subject again, except for the necessary arrangements concerning his departure, and the conduct of affairs during his absence, till the day before he went, when I earnestly exhorted him to take care of himself, and keep out of the way of temptation. He laughed at my anxiety, but assured me there was no cause for it, and promised to attend to my advice. "I suppose it is no use asking you to fix a day for your return," said I.
"Why, no. I hardly can, under the circumstances, but be assured, love, I shall not be long away."
"I don't wish to keep you a prisoner at home," I replied. "I should not grumble at your staying whole months away, if you can be happy so long without me, provided I knew you were safe. But I don't like the idea of your being there among your friends, as you call them."
"Pooh, pooh, you silly girl. Do you think I can take care of myself?"
"You didn't last time. But this time, Arthur," I added earnestly, "show me that you can, and teach me that I need not fear to trust you." He promised fair, but in such a manner as we seek to soothe a child. And did he keep his promise? No, and henceforth I can never trust his word. Bitter, bitter confession! Tears blind me while I write. It was early in March that he went, and he did not return till July. This time he did not trouble himself to make excuses as before, and his letters were less frequent, and shorter and less affectionate, especially after the first few weeks. They came slower and slower, and more terse and careless every time. But still, when I omitted writing, he complained of my neglect. When I wrote sternly and coldly, as I confess I frequently did at the last, he blamed my harshness, and said it was enough to scare him from his home. When I tried mild persuasion, he was a little more gentle in his replies, and promised to return. But I had learnt, at last, to disregard his promises.
End of chapter 28.